being here, and we're running a few minutes behind, but a few technical difficulties. We'll go ahead and get it going. Ms. Harris has asked to join us via teleconference, so she's on the call, and we'll proceed from here. So let me welcome everyone and appreciate a little bit of sunshine. Well, we've had rain these last few days, and I know we needed the rain, but it's always good to see the sun. With that, I'll go ahead and ask if we will adopt our agenda, if there's any changes to tonight's agenda. Hearing none. Felina, when you make your motion, I would ask that you state your name and your position on the motion. So with that, I'll ask if there's a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
You have to do roll call. All votes have to
All
be roll
votes,
call. when you have
aye.
a vote.
For those who are aye, signify by stating your name and aye. Start with Mr. Harris.
Councilman Harris, aye.
Mr. Now.
Aye, Councilman Now, aye.
Councilman Paul Hinkle, aye.
Councilman Jerry Auction, aye.
Ms. Harris.
Councilwoman Selena Harris, aye.
Thank you. Motion is agreed upon unanimously, and we'll move on down through our agenda. The next item is general business. I'll start with comments from council members, and I'll start with Mr. Harris.
Okay, I just had a couple things too, that several of us went to the luncheon with a congressman Henry the other day, carried on by the League of Municipalities, and it was very good, very informative, enjoyed it. And the other, I'd like to thank Planning Director Hare for reaching out. I had looking at a neighbor's complaint here a while back and wanting a fence down the road when they get the meadows to it. So she's willing to take time and go out there and look at it, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr. Now.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything at this moment.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Mr. Auction.
Yes, you stole a little bit of my thunder. I was happy about the weather, so I'm glad you stole the thunder. Yeah, so yeah, it's again, yeah, the luncheon that the League of Municipalities put on was a great experience. I was very pleased with the turnout that we had. Troutman, I think we made some of the other municipalities regret not sending everybody, but yeah, it was great, and just look forward to more of this sunshine. So.
Ms. Harris.
I don't have, but I just too wanted to mention the luncheon. I wanted to mention the luncheon as well. Is there feedback in there?
No, you're good.
Okay, great. Very good luncheon, very informative, and I enjoyed it, and I thank the league for inviting us.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Hinkle.
Well, I'm kind of kudos on what's been said, and glad that Councilman Harris and Eddie Now and Jerry and Felina and myself were able to attend, as well as the town manager. Found it very informative. Gives us a good chance to get out there and do a little networking and shaking of hands and having discussions with our fellow elected officials in the region. And so enjoyed it very much, and look forward to doing some more of that in the upcoming future. That's it, sir.
Thank you. Mine is a couple things. One is a question for Chief Watson. Law Enforcement Week, when is that?
It starts next week.
Okay,
And
great.
It'll start on Sunday of next week.
Awesome. So, please send our thank you to all of our officers. Let them know we appreciate all the work that they do. And I know we already have had our meeting, but want to make sure that we say that in advance. I think it's also recognition of teachers' appreciation, and so appreciate all the efforts that our teachers put in in making sure that our students are well educated in Troutman, and it's not an easy job, and I know the county is probably have had their hand full with teachers, trying to retain them like all other employment, but want to make sure that we acknowledge our teachers and all the appreciation that they do for us. One thing I did want to mention also is that I had a chance to visit with the town of Franklinton. I think there's 13 towns that now have a social district. I don't know how that would work in Troutman necessarily, but I would maybe ask Mr. Wyatt and the staff to maybe look at a social district in Troutman. Maybe not for now, but maybe in the future, and what that might look like for our town. I know the folks that have attended them, I've had some good feedback, that you know, it starts to bring people out as we think about going into the summer. Might be a good opportunity to partner with Chip and his team and some of the local businesses to entertain some folks in a kind of a social setting. So again, just something to explore and think about.
Maybe about, has Kannapolis started theirs yet? I know that's on the book, so to speak.
Kannapolis, either Kannapolis or Concord, I know, one of the two has already started theirs.
And Salisbury was thinking about it. was it not?
Salisbury has
And
it.
Charlotte, of course, is working on it. They're talking about 9 months, but they've got a bigger situation to work with. But their community is just right around us that are
Sure.
serious about it.
Yeah, my understanding, the legislation speaks of a municipality allowing it. And again, if you think about Charlotte's big, and they're asking for an exemption to do it in multiple locations, right? So, you know, whether it's the uptown or it's, you know, midtown or NODA or whatever, they're looking at trying to do similar things in multiple areas. So it is starting to catch on quite a bit. And so just, again, just thinking from a smaller town feel, I know some of the smaller townships have really gotten some advantage out of doing it. So,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Mayor, what was that called? Social what
social district.
district?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to add one other thing, if I may. You brought up some things that got my wheels. Talking about Police Officers Week, I think it's next Wednesday. There is a gathering at the lodge, FOP Lodge, that, you know, if we're all able, you know, to be there to be a part of the memorial service and so forth. I just wanted to mention that, sir. I may have taken some away from the town manager's talk, but I just wanted to say that before I forgot it.
I think it's Thursday.
Excuse me?
Is it Thursday? Thursday, okay.
Oh, Thursday, okay, excuse me. It's on my calendar,
It's okay.
whatever it was.
I was double checking my calendar, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have it on
yeah,
Wednesday.
yeah.
Oh.
I had Wednesday on the brain for some reason. Yeah, it's on my calendar at home, yeah.
All right. I will turn it over to Mr. Wyatt.
Thank you all, council, and as you all stated, and not to be too repetitive, but I did enjoy last week. Patrick McHenry has represented our district, the town of Troutman specifically, numerous times, and with the redistricting phase that went through North Carolina, we was in, we was out, we was in, we was out, and we are finally awarded town of Troutman, Iredell County as a whole will stay within the district that Patrick McHenry serves. It truly was a pleasure not only to see some of our peers, whether it be you elected officials or me as a town manager, for the League of Municipalities to host us there last week, and to hear directly from Representative McHenry on what he does in Washington. He has visited us numerous times, and of course, looks to serve us with various legislation in Washington D.C., but to let us know how we can better prepare and keep him informed. I did take note, and we will and have sent him a copy of our agenda. As you all heard, that just lets him know, and his office knows, we work well with Will Bowman and Brett Keeter, which is his right and left hand, so to speak, for he has other staff, of course, but the ones that we work through are those two individuals, to send them a copy of our agendas, and we will continue doing that. That's one of the things that I heard loud and clear last week that we had not been doing. Even though we do communicate with those gentlemen, we certainly will keep them informed. While this agenda may not directly tell them how we need their office to be involved, but if they see what we have on our agenda, it's up to them to determine whether or not that affects them and impacts them. So of course it certainly keeps them informed. A couple of other things that you all mentioned, this coming Saturday, we have the red and blue 5K, 7 p.m., is that correct, Chief?
Yes, sir.
That we will have here in the town. There is already some happy back and forth between our police and the firemen as to who's going to have the turnout and have the most. Chief Watson, if you will, tell them what the charity is that you have picked.
We decided to do this race, and each department chose a charity to donate the proceeds. Will be divided between us and the fire department. We chose First Responders Children's Foundation, which was founded in the days after 9/11 to ensure the financial needs of children of fallen firefighters and police officers. And then the fire department picked the Firefighters Burn Children's Fund for what they would donate to.
So even though we're having a little bit of fun aggravating each other, I can't tell you all the names that the firemen call the police or the policemen call the firemen, but it is truly one of those that they get to pick on each other as professions fondly, and it is going to be a good event. We have lots of citizens, and there are numerous that are both. They are not only policemen and firemen, but they do both professions, whether it's full-time firemen, part-time police, or full-time policemen and part-time fire. But we are looking forward to a good event this Saturday, and we once again get to show off our town, and lots of people in our community truly love both professions, and they will come out, and we do take donations that will go to these worthwhile charities that both the fire and police have chosen to support, and we're appreciative of that. As you all also mentioned, next week was declared many years ago to be Law Enforcement Appreciation Week, but also in specific, there's one day that is specified to remember our fallen officers. The town of Troutman has one. Was Officer Bill Pettit that we will get to go and honor, that paid the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. Even though he was only a part-time officer for the town of Troutman, he will forever be remembered as one of our officers who gave the ultimate sacrifice in the performance of his duties. And for all those that can make it next Thursday at the Fraternal Order Police Lodge, to remember all the officers, and regardless of what agency uniform that they was wearing, they will give a service, and we in Troutman get to honor ours that gave the ultimate sacrifice. Also, finally, after almost 6 months since we signed the contract, we have our digital billboard back up and operating. We was joking with Emily a little bit earlier. Chip Smith has already had 2 requests that have came to him for people that would like to put different things up there. We do have rules in place as to what can be posted on the billboard. If it's nonprofits and things of that nature, we certainly will try to put those up there, but we are tickled to have a digital billboard that is operational. COVID has struck us all in many, many unfortunate ways in getting parts and supplies and getting them up there. Certainly it is part of that. I would also like to point out once again, we have wonderful staff here in the town of Troutman. Some of these department heads and directors have worked, as I did time sheets this morning, we had 3 different ones that are salaried positions that worked over 20 hours beyond the 80 hours that they're supposed to work. And I'd just like to point out, not to single them out and embarrass them, but just to tell you all, as town council, sometimes we have citizens that send us a text or an email, and they may say, hey, I sent them an email at 8 o'clock this morning or 10 o'clock and they didn't respond to me today. I can tell you and vouch for the staff, if we got the email, and I will go to the Mayor Pro Tem, he certainly can tell you all, he sends us emails, don't he, Justin?
Yes, sir.
That we don't get sometimes because he sent them to us both and we didn't get them. And we don't know what happens with the Mayor Pro Tem's email, but he'll call and say, hey, I sent you an email and we didn't get it. But if we get the emails, we certainly do respond, and he knows how fast we normally do respond, and sometimes it may take us a day, but we respond. That's why he knows when there's not a response, what happened, because he knows that we do respond. And last week, there was a day he had sent us a couple emails and there was not a response to either, so he knew that there was something that went awry, and said, hey, did y'all not get either one of my 3 emails, I believe it was. And it's like, no, we didn't get them. But we do have those that do occur, and if that's the case, then we certainly want to know about them, because we don't ignore. But sometimes it may take us a day, but we certainly do respond and will respond when we get them. But like I said, today when I did timesheets and forward them to be processed, we had over 3 department directors that had more than 20 hours. One was pushing 30 in a 2-week cycle. So I'm very proud of the department heads and directors that are exceeding just bare minimal hours that they are doing. And again, it's not my intent to name them or embarrass them, but we are constantly exceeding the minimum work ethic that's put in to get the jobs done. And I noticed this afternoon, there was 2 employees that didn't get lunch until the 2 and 3 o'clock range, because we have various duties. And while you might want to take lunch at 11 to 1 in those time frames, sometimes duty calls, and I appreciate their work ethic there. And I will stop short unless you all have any specific questions of me.
Ms. Harris, any questions for Mr. White?
No.
Okay, all right. We will move on down to discussion of the budget. Mr. White and Mr. Moody.
Council and, Mayor and Council, we've had several individual questions. Justin and I and every department head and director, as we met you all to try to prepare the budgets, we have had several individual questions, and we have tried to craft and come up with all the answers to your questions that you have. And we certainly are not trying to be short. And I will go ahead and be upfront and tell you, in trying to be as transparent as we can. We've had meetings and phone calls and emails, and this is certainly not an attempt to sidestep anything that's out there. We do have some expenditures in trying to get our budget prepared. This being Justin's first one as our finance director, we have tried to get a budget prepared for you and answer a lot of questions. In our budget workshops, we have tried to prepare budgets for you, and also make sure that we was paying for things as we go forward. One of the things I passed out earlier this evening that is not in the budget, that I wanted to go ahead and get out of the way first, if you all would look at this handout here, is Chip Smith's, falls under his purview, that is not in our budget at all. but for discussion's sakes, and we will be glad to go and get more information as you direct us or need, but I stress, this is not in the budget, but is information for you all to study and or consider. But it was lighting. When we first started looking in our budget workshop and we discussed lighting, and again, I apologize that Chip is not here, and we certainly can, and he will be available Thursday. If you all have questions between now and then, feel free, of course, to direct me or Chip to come back with more information so that we can certainly discuss it and be prepared to discuss it. This is one of the companies, as Madam Harris, who's on the phone with us, discussed, is probably the premier lighting company out there. But the total project of this, as you all see in I want to say it was the last page in the back. If you add those together, was in the $800,000 range to add all lights for soccer field, the parking lot, lenses to be added to the poles from the soccer and baseball fields. The one field next to the last page, it shows you just the baseball, softball fields themselves were $439. The soccer fields was $349. The volleyball area was $79. Then the parking parts on it was $24 each. And when you add all those together is where it came up in the 800 and some thousand range. If you go to the third from the last page, for whatever reason, they only provided us financing options for just the softball field only. And don't know why that was the case, but if you took their total numbers back there and did financing of that total number, that's where you get up into the, how much it would be of financing everything. And speaking with Chip, you all see what time of the year we're in now, and this is where we look at these numbers in the evenings for most, and I refer to Chief Watson, not to get him in trouble or hot water, but he is what I would say a typical parent of elementary and middle school children, because he has one of each right now. He also has a high schooler, but the high schooler would not utilize these fields that we have, but he does have elementary and middle school children, which is typical of what these fields are utilized for. But right now, with the daylight hours that we have, we basically are looking at using lights for April, May, June, not so much, July, not so much, August, not so much, then September, October. So when you look at these pricing, you basically are talking about turning lights on for 4 or 5 months of the year and how much that costs us. And talking with Chip in good conscience, we didn't feel like we could come and ask you all for these kinds of funds to be placed in a budget right now, understanding the needs of the park, and we didn't. We haven't put that out there, but we did get the numbers as requested so that you all could see and know what they are. And if we had an absolute surplus of funds, so that you could see what the financing options were, what the rates that they say the financing rates would be, so that they could be down there and what they are. And that you all could play with those numbers yourselves and see what they are. I do think at some point in time, but as I said, Chief Watson being the typical parent in this room of parents, my children are beyond this age to utilize these fields. but for what the return is, and I'm not turning my back on our children that we have in this community. I certainly think we have children in this community that utilize these fields. As Chip can tell you, we have children wanting these fields all the time. But once we have this expenditure of these lights on the field, then we also need additional personnel to manage the fields in the evenings also. And it's not just a fact of paying for lights. We've got a light bill that then follows, and then we've got personnel that then follows. And like I say, that's for a few hours more for 4 or 5 months, 2 or 3 hours in the evening, and especially on the weekend time. I don't know that the return comes in when we're looking at other necessities right now. If you all are so gracious to approve the budget that we do have proposed, the concession stand, the billboard, the scoreboards are there that one of our civic groups has offered to help defray most of the cost of those scoreboards. But the concession stands, certainly, we want to continue from a rollover in this current year's budget into next year's budget. And if we get those things in there, we certainly feel that incrementally that helps us use the park in an effective way, and then put other amenities in the park that will be more widely used during proper daylight hours, instead of spending this kind of money for a 2 to 3 hour, 4 or 5 months extension in the evening time. I'll be glad to answer any questions you all have about this before I move on to the rest of the items in the budget.
My only comment is that, right now, things are at their peak. Inflation is worse it's been since 1980. I can see the lights, as I stated before. I can see the lights as part of our park sometime in the future. I'm not discounting that totally. But I agree with you, sir, that perhaps right now is not the right time. Perhaps in the future, year, 2 years, maybe 5, whenever it's feasible financially, and we all agree that it would give a good return on usage of our park in attracting the kinds of leagues as well as our normal citizens, not normal, but regular citizens using it as well as the outside leagues coming in and playing for a weekend and that sort of thing that we're all used to as well. Right now, again, I will just say I agree on postponing that part of it. Let me ask you on the concession stand, that includes the bathrooms. What was that amount again that we're rolling over?
325.
2 something from this past year?
Yeah, budgeted 325 for the transfer to the.
It was 325 this past year? 325 is what Justin is telling me from this past year. We roll forward to this coming year.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like that investment on something that is going to be used, be it daylight or nighttime or whenever, the bathrooms as well as concession stand, to provide a service to the people attending. I would agree to go ahead and let's just study that, ask questions, get to know it, and then perhaps next year, year after, as appropriate, then we look at it more seriously. That would be my recommendation.
Other thoughts?
I can agree with him. I think lighting may be something good down the road, but we got the rest of the parks have to be finished before we even worry about the other things we had on the list. That was in our original list, we had basketball play courts, we had, we get the field in, get the concession stands and the other bathrooms. And we need to get those things completed. Then we go to the next one. That's another phase.
I'm going to skip around a little bit. Ms. Harris, as you're on the committee, any thoughts that you have?
While I do, I would love to have lights, and I'm a big fan of Musco. I agree with the town manager. It is effective. That Paul said, now is probably not the time to look in the future.
Okay. Mr. Now?
Power-wise, with Duke Power, I guess coming in and doing our power, when we, I also agree with everyone that we need to wait, but when we put our power source in, are we gonna have the appropriate power to put these lights up?
No, not without doing some major infrastructure. And now that I've give everybody the bad news, or at least my opinion, the silver lining in the cloud, so to speak, if there is one, and speaking with our wonderful partner, Jan Comer, who has been probably our best partner all these years, and making the ESC Park come to a reality. I spoke with her this past Friday night. She has spoke with her contacts at Duke Power, and they certainly would like to see lighting come to a fruition. So even though we're saying, not right now, not this price, not this, these discussions shouldn't stop. And there's certainly some possibilities with some community grants, just like what you're talking about, Councilman, now. There's got to be, I don't know the proper terminology, a grid block or something dropped in there, even for our concession stand that comes in, that's got to happen. So we are scheduled to meet with them soon and let them know that this is on the horizon. But just like what all of council has said, we've got some other amenities that we have to build first, but we're getting closer to this, could be happening soon. So we absolutely want to talk to them and making sure that power source is available, just so that our concession stand can happen, so that the scoreboard can happen, and so that the watering of the fields and those things can happen. So that will be forthcoming.
Right, I'm just concerned though that the money we spend for electric will be obsolete if we don't do it the right way the first time.
No, sir, and your point's well taken, and that's why we want to have this meeting with Duke Power. So whatever grid that they drop in is suitable enough so that if and when we do go to these, that it's already in place so that we're ready to this part then will be ready.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's kind of, to piggyback on what Eddie just said, agreed to what, I'm gonna use the term stub out, you know, kind of like we're talking about with our subdivision, stubbing out for a future one that's next door, and they run to a certain point, and that's, you know, they stub into it when the next subdivision is built next door. You know, just to stub out to where, when they bring in, you know, the wires are there, all they gotta do is drop the poles, you know, put the lights in, et cetera, you know, do the main grunt, expensive grunt work. But again, the wiring is there. The wiring is there. That's, I think that's what, you know,
Yeah,
both of us talking about.
I agree with you, gentlemen, because part of this pricing is some of that you're talking about.
Yeah, I just don't wanna be flushing good money away in 2 years, okay, when we decide to put well, we should have, you know, did it then, because now it's obsolete.
I'm definitely on board with you, gentlemen, and part of this pricing was to make sure that grid is installed, and even when we go with the concession stand, that grid still has to be in place. So we definitely will do the foundation for that, to make sure that that power source is available for the future expansion of the park.
Excellent.
Yes, sir.
So, is this the only bid we've gotten?
No, as we discussed last, we had a bid
For
for
the house.
the,
185.
it was Halad, but it was 195. It did not include what we just talked about. It did not include anything else. It did not include soccer fields. It did not include the grid work for our concession stand. It did not include any line work for our scoreboards. It did not include anything for our parking lots. It didn't include anything. And even though some people would argue with us and say that, I don't know if you want to say Allied or Halide,
Halide.
or the basic light bulbs versus the LED light bulbs, but again, it was a much cheaper system but there again, some people argue you get what you pay for. You have a much higher electricity bill with that system, and you are replacing bulbs on a lot more regular basis. This system is a 25-year warranty system. That system, they walk away 60 days later, you're on your own.
Is Musco the only one in the game for LED?
No,
Stadium
they're
type?
certainly not.
Okay, because I don't see it getting any cheaper.
100% agree.
Well, yeah, well, sticker shock is a real thing. I'm not immune to that, but when you sit back, it's not getting any cheaper.
I can't argue with certain principles of that. I certainly cannot argue with you there.
So, so if I understand correctly, the thought here is that we would continue to investigate lighting for the park, specifically around as we look at putting in the concession stands. But we're not done investigating that. Again, I agree. From a timing perspective, probably not the right time to put in those lightings, but I do think that we need to make sure that when we are prepared to pull that trigger, that we have all the data, in order to do that effectively. And I say that because I also want us to think about the surrounding community, what types of light we put in there. So I think the last thing we want to have is a light that shines right into Mr. Hinkle's bedroom. He is sitting here, but so again, it looks like they tried to do excuse me, everything to eliminate light pollution with these lights, but I just want to make sure that we fully investigated that.
Well, and you brought up some very valid points that I think our community needs to hear and needs to be reiterated, if I may. The light pollution is the best with this system of any. Going back to what Councilman Oxer brought up, the cheaper system will absolutely have the most spillage and pollution by far. As Council Lady Harris has pointed out, with her experience with the colleagues that she has, the Musco system, as I said last month, and they told me, when I first said, why would you light a ball from underneath? Once they explain it, it makes total sense, especially from these younger children. When you see a light from underneath of a ball, it gives you a whole new concept of that ball being lit from underneath so that they can see it. It also requires less watts and less need for lights to be shown from above so that you can see it when you see it lit from underneath. As Councilman Now can tell you, this is the lighting system that is used in Panther Stadium. It's the lighting system that is used at NASCAR tracks because they're able to do the lights from underneath and you see better. So it requires less lights. So Mayor Pro Tem Hinkle is less likely to see light spillage in his neighborhood with this system than any other out there on the market because of their engineering when they do that. So that then translates to our power bill is going to be a lot less because of that. So Mayor, your points are very valid in what you said on that part of it. But also to what you said, I want to reiterate, even though in our budget, we said our recommendation is we didn't put it in the budget. Certainly with Jan Comer's zeal, if I may use that word, we may be back in 2 months from now and say, hey council, guess what? We now have partners and we would like you all to reconsider, can we find this somehow, can we do this? But for right now, we don't have it to put in you all's budget and say, please consider paying for this. And that's the point that I wanted to put out there. So I apologize if I'm getting off track or trying to confuse you, but to your point, Mayor, we certainly are working on this. We have not scrapped it. We're not putting it on the shelf. We will continue to try to get this done, but we do not feel like as a staff that we can recommend you all to put it in the budget and write an $800,000 plus check and or finance it right now and proceed with it. We still want to work with our community partners and see that if we can come up with a way, but it's you all's directive, of course, that if we expedite that somehow or be given a time frame to go forth contractually, that's your choice.
Yeah, I think that, for me, that's what I wanted to hear. Just the fact that if there's some community effort out there to try to do it, then maybe it's, if they're willing to pay, over half or whatever, then we'll reconsider at that point. But I agree with, currently, from a budgeting perspective, since we're in budget season, it is a bit of, as Mr. Octor said, sticker shock. But there may be opportunities for us to partner with others to make this happen.
We do have some community partners, and speaking with Jan Comer, that over a period of time, I do think there is opportunities that we certainly can have people step up and make this not be a town of Troutman sole expenditure. I do think that possibility is a reality. Yes, sir.
Also, I'm reading here on a positive note, okay, this contract expiration is good till 8/27/2023. So that's given us a year and a half.
They definitely are giving us time to work, and I'm glad you pointed that out. Before I closed, I was gonna.
And
So that's somewhat of a fixed, I mean, this quote's valid for that long.
Right. And that gives us time to massage sponsors or, and I mean, the guarantee, you're looking at a 25-year light guarantee, basically.
Yes, this is a 25-year guarantee.
I mean, I'm not a salesman for Musco, but where do you go and find a 25-year for anything guarantee?
Yeah, true. Great. Thank you, good conversation.
So I totally agree that we should postpone it, keep working for it, and let's maybe possibly really seriously consider this company though. Because I stated before, you get what you pay for.
Would we need to consult with them, sorry,
No,
would we need to consult with them when, like, what Mayor Pro Tem was saying, the stub out? Is this something that we would need to confirm, like with their engineers, or, I mean, because I see it says, you need 483 phase, but, I'm sure there's more detail than that.
Duke Power is the one that's gonna control that conversation.
Okay.
Quite candidly, regardless of, it's not a chicken or egg situation, but it kind of is. If we start building of the concession stand, then that's gonna come first, but Duke Power still controls the power, regardless of which project comes first. And Duke Power will control basically a screened-in area, which is where the power's gonna go, and Duke Power will decide how much power and the grid work that goes in that. And regardless, like I say, which one comes first, whether it's the lights or whether it's the concession stand, they're still gonna have to get the power to that area and know how much power it's gonna take. It'll just be the boxes that come up, and then how much comes out of that, what goes where. The rest of our discussion is, I don't have that.
This is from last time.
Okay. Our budgets, as we proposed and was asked, we put out sheets per request, and I wanted to clarify a couple points that we was asked. One was in the budget, the first thing was we asked was what was the requested proposed salary increases was I requesting. And bluntly, that was a 6% across the board for normal employees, and I'm not trying to play games with what that means, normal employees, other than law enforcement. And I did not differentiate, and I will be happy to discuss with you all if that should be a combination of a COLA, cost of living, versus merit. And I did not put that in there. And talking with a couple council members, in years past, we have done X amount of cost of living that everybody gets, and then we have a certain percentage that is merit-based, and that is fine. It does not offend me one way or the other to do it that way. The other part was 10% for law enforcement. And this, our proposed budget did include a max of those. And again, it does not offend me that if you all as a council decides to do an X percentage of a cost of living and then a certain percentage to be merit-based. Other municipalities and locales do that differently. Some automatically do it with the first check in July, which is most places, they're annual. Others do it on higher dates. I would recommend that we can do what this town has always done, and that be the first check in July. Now, last year, we did do a cost of living in July. We did a merit-based in January, but that's because last year we did a higher raise than what had historically been done in the town of Troutman. And for sticker shock factor, we did the merit-based in January, which basically cut it in half. Based off of the year, if you do it in January, it cuts it in half. So that's what it boiled down to. So to me, my recommendation to you all is, when it comes to raises, is go back to what has historically been done in one of two ways. And again, whatever you all's wishes are. If you wish to do merit-based, then tell me what your percentages are. We do, and we have redone what our merit performances and evaluations are. Those will be performed and done regardless of whether you all tie raises to that or not. We still will go through the process of doing an evaluation of all of our employees. If there's any issues with any employees, we will deal with that as we should, because that's our jobs. That's going to be done regardless of what you all's decision is when it comes to evaluations and it being tied to a raise. But my recommendations for the employees' salaries were 6% for non-law enforcement and 10% for law enforcement. Now, the reason I did that, quite frankly, was right here in Iredell County, the county had already decided, beginning this month, that all of their employees got a minimum of 5.8 something % raise, every employee. Some of them got as much as 8% starting in May. In addition to those raises, they're getting an additional raise starting in July. Last year, county employees got more raise than our town employees did. They have historically, for the last 6 years, gotten anywhere from 1% to 3% more raise than the town of Troutman employees. I am not trying to have a feud, nor do I need it in the press that we are arguing with the county over, well, they paid this, therefore we should pay that. That's not my intent in arguing with you all or presenting to you all we should pay ours because this, or we should pay because of that. I am simply stating market facts are, the town of Troutman has been behind Iredell County. Iredell County is deficient in a lot of areas of employees that they have. So I understand they have to do what they need to do when it comes to employees. As I have suggested to you all before, the job market as a whole for government employees is behind for everybody. We too are seeing a drastic drop when it comes to getting applicants to apply for positions. We too are having to do some things to get applicants to apply. We have not had to do the bonuses and some of the jargon that other municipalities have had to do, but we are having to adjust our pay rates accordingly to stay competitive with some of our neighbors, whether that be Statesville, Mooresville, Iredell County, or some of the surrounding municipalities that's within a 30-minute drive of us. Mecklenburg County has no jobs that don't pay significantly higher than most of our jobs. So all that being said, we need to be careful in what we are offering, and then we have to look at the longevity pay of our employees, as I expressed to you all during our budget workshop. We had a policy that was set up for our employees to retain them. Unfortunately, it was kind of backwards. It paid employees incrementally every 2 years, but then it stopped paying them after they was here 10 years. It stopped. If it's longevity pay, why do you quit paying them after 10 years? Makes no sense to me. If your intent is to retain veteran employees, that to me is when you would want to start paying them. Not open the door and say you can leave now, which is what that policy did. So we, along with a couple department heads in our employee services, we're reevaluating some of those policies so that we are trying to retain them. What's the word I keep asking you and Josh about? Compression pay. That's where we are certainly out of kilter. So when I ask you all for these raises in this budget, it's not that we're starting pay out to get there. It's that we take care of the employees that we have here. And this is absolutely where we are deficient. But again, when I ask for these raises on one hand, we're going to have people look at you elected officials and say, my God, has he lost his mind? 6% and 10%. Then I tell you all, look in the last year at how many employees we had to leave here and go to the county. 10% of our workforce? Okay, why did they do that? What did the county just do? We have employees leave here and go to Mooresville. What did they just do? It's real when I tell you that there's a pay differential between local governments. That's certainly real. Is that the only reason? I'm not telling you that it is. But I am telling you that it's certainly things for us to consider and things that we can control. When we can take care of certain things like that, it matters. The other things that we have done within the last year is we have certainly made sure that when it comes to our insurance benefits, we absolutely are a leader in that area. We took care of that. When we lost certain employees, we were able to have a savings on our insurance pool, so our insurance cost to the town went down, so now we're able to do that. Well, if we're able to increase our services that we offer to our employees, now we need to come over here and do this. So when we did our budget offer to you of 6% and 10%, that's in there. It's already in there. I'm not asking you to increase anything above that. Do you all have any questions of me about the raises or the proposed raises? Yes, sir?
My question is, how long ago did council, and was it council that put this policy in effect that after 10 years, our employees didn't get anything?
I honestly could not tell you when that policy was adopted. I didn't look it up. I couldn't tell
I'd
you.
really like to know their thinking.
I know it was at least before 2008.
How,
At least before
2008?
2008, yes, sir.
long time ago.
I don't remember it, and I was off at that time. I agree with town manager, that's asinine.
Could, yeah.
10 years, you get nothing. I mean, that's totally right the opposite. And I don't know why anybody would think that is of sane mind, so, but I agree, that certainly needs to be changed and, brought into line with where it should be.
And this paper that we're looking at right here, that's the 6% and the 10%?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir. That is today's
Today's,
salary
right.
without the increase.
And then for future years then, what would be your suggestion? The 6 and 10 every year?
No, sir. We certainly can't make that without knowing what the economy's gonna bring and what our tax basis will be also. Now, next year will be a reevaluation year. I personally feel like we're in the start of an economy decline. So without knowing what that's going to be, I certainly can't make any future recommendations.
Yeah, I agree, the tax base obviously and the economy and so forth, but, what I've been seeing at least the past few years is, trying to keep our workers from leaving us for surrounding local governments, whether it be county, Mooresville, Statesville, even Charlotte, Huntersville, you know what I'm saying? I see that as and you can do things with the fringe benefits, but most workers do not look at that. They don't look at it. They look at that pay. And I worked for a company that every year they'd send out a sheet saying, yeah, we pay you this. We take that, maybe even 125% of that we pay in fringe benefits. Well, but again, most people, I gotta live now, I'm worried about now. Fringe benefits are nice, but this is where I am right now. So we've got to remain competitive to that, because if we've got good workers here, and I think we certainly do, I don't wanna lose them, over something, within reason, over something like pay. And, if we've got local governments around us that are putting us at risk of losing some of our people, and as manager just said, we've already lost several, I don't want that to happen. And I think we're in a good financial position that we can take care of our employees on that level. And if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, yes, in the past, we've looked at COLA as well as just a base and a merit, COLA and merit. But at this year, which is to me is a very unusual year, based on what's going on with COVID and the job market being what it is and what it's taking to even get people to look at you to apply, let alone come to work for you. We've got to remain competitive in the salary range. And if the suggestion this year, which is not necessarily a suggestion for years to come, but for this year, to handle the current situation now, is 10% for law enforcement and 6% for our other staff members, then so be it. Again, I don't want to lose any more good employees. This is the bottom line. And if this is what the manager feels like he needs to keep folks here, then he's got my
I
support.
saw the town manager at Statesville make the same comments the other day about how to retain, you have to retain employees, but he's pushing a raise similar to this one, because he's losing them too at Statesville, so they're going other places.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're not the only ones.
Ms. Harris, I don't want to lose you in the argument, the discussion. Any comment?
No, sir, no comment, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Oxford, your comment?
Does of course, 10% for the police officers, I'm just looking at the departments, the default positions, and 6% for everybody else, I'm assuming outside of government body? In the department?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
So, quick question. Look on the summary highlights, and it says we're projected general fund deficit 49,216.
That's a typo, yes.
Okay.
Should be 64,216.
That's what, okay.
But that is the inclusion with the full-time code enforcement officer,
Yeah, okay.
That's,
as well as leaving recycling fees, revenues, all that the same.
I was going to explain that, yes.
Okay.
That's if there's no adjustment to fees.
One more question on the, in fact, Jerry said something that made me think this. For law enforcement, you're proposing 10%, would that include Ashley?
No,
It's
She-
just
she would
sworn,
be six.
sworn officers?
yes.
So, back to my point, so we've got to issue a balanced budget. So
Yes, sir.
so we've got to find that somewhere, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, yeah, we're not done.
Okay, yeah, yeah. All right.
Does anybody have any more questions on the raises?
None for me.
What
Okay,
do you need?
thank you.
The next part, number 3 on the summary highlights was, we was asked the cost of a code enforcement officer, and the total cost
It's
of
in
that was,
It's on page,
37.
page 4 of that
yeah, there it
little
is.
packet I gave you guys.
Say page 4.
Yeah, the window focus.
Yeah, it shows the salary, wages expected, the taxes, the group insurance, retirement expense, and the cost of a truck. The first year total expense would be $107,090. Which, going back to the front page, if we did that, would put us a total of $64,216 in the negative. That's if you all decided to add a full-time planning and zoning, a code enforcement officer in the planning and zoning department. And in reality, it would, and I apologize, and sitting here looking at that, it would in reality be closer to more than that, because we would still need to have John Gaines here for a little bit to actually train the person, in addition to the cost of hiring the person. So, and I apologize, that's not Justin's fault. I owe you the apology for that. He created the position in there as he was told to do, but,
Would we incur higher costs with our current situation in order to get training from him?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Would we have additional costs for the training as opposed to what we're currently paying?
Yes, because what
It'd be an
Justin
open
did in adding the position is he subtracted the contracted service out.
Also, it's subtracted out.
Yes,
Okay. Okay.
yes. So that's the explanation of that. And, as we had discussed in the budget retreat when we was trying to come up with this, again, I'm not trying to talk you all into or out of the position. That's solely you all's discussion as you all would like to do. But it's, in speaking with Lynn and talking to a couple council members, right now, we certainly are behind the 8 ball in some code enforcement issues. We are. If we added a day to the code enforcement officer,
All right, gentlemen.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
if we added a day, then that basically doubles his contract, which gets us up to 70,000, which would in effect pay for a full-time position. So we're between a rock and a hard place to answer you all's questions and inquiries about it. And being quite candid and going forward, in the full-time position of the code enforcement, mine and Lynn's concerns of going forward is we are getting into some concerns that are going to be controversial as we go forward. We've got 3 houses now that we feel like are tear downs and will be tear downs. One of them is obvious. We think the entire community will sing praises once the house is tore down. One of them, maybe not. Another one is going to be kind of a probably not so feel-good story once that house is tore down. The people involved, the situation involved depends on who tells the version. Once we get there and we are in the tear down of it, it's probably not gonna be good once we're there. But in following the code, that's what needs to be done because it is not good for the neighbors that's involved. But the more of those situations we have, that's the kind of things that's going to happen in our community. If we're gonna follow the rules, it's in that situation to where certainly somebody needs to do something, but in all of these situations, it's not just gonna be clear cut that a bad person is doing something bad in every situation. And some of these situations, it's gonna be good people can't afford to continue to do what they need to do. And as we have proper code enforcement doing their job, not so good things are gonna wind up happening. And that's okay. As we enforce the rules, it's not gonna be the town comes out unblemished in those situations. But the neighbors that are around and are affected by these situations, they're gonna be appreciative that the town did what they needed to. But the other people on the outside that's not effective are gonna think, how dare we? And why did we in those situations? I just want to caution and forewarn, as we have discussed, that's gonna be the situation. The more aggressive we get into code enforcement and with the more time and effort we do these, that's the situations we're gonna get in. But just like yesterday, I was in the grocery store and seen some good friends of mine, and it's amazing what some of our citizens are seeing, just like councilmen now. Our neighbors are seeing different parts in town, and they think we have forgotten them or we're not paying attention. But once they brought up a problem area to me, and then I acknowledged, hey, we're already sending them letters, we're already doing this, and I identified 3 more trouble spots on that same street, then they shook my hand and said, thank you for paying attention, because we didn't think nobody was. So there are pros and cons as we go forward with this position. And again, I'm not talking you into or talking you out of a full-time code enforcement position. I just want you to know both sides. Lynn, is there anything to what I said you would like to add?
I guess one thing I just want to point out too, the manager asked planning to start doing some code enforcement rounds. So that's something we've added to our duties. So we're gonna start doing that 1 day a week so that we can kind of stay in front of things. And when John's here on Friday, that we can kind of say, here's some things that we found. I do want to point out, like, we went out, saw some things, I'm like, that looks like an issue, that looks like an issue, and came back with a very long list. And there's very few of those that actually were code violations. You know, mildew on the side of homes and, you know, those types of things. So that's something I want to point out too, that code enforcement can only do certain things. We can't require people to paint their homes. Typically, we can't require them to plant flowers. You know, the things that are really going to make our town beautiful. So I just wanted to point that out. But we are trying to get ahead of it from a staff standpoint now in helping John when he's here on Friday to say, you know, you've only got 8 hours on Friday, so we're going to try to, you know, go out there, look, as Ron suggested, and say, you know, here's what we found, or issues, and we need you to take care of these. So we are being more proactive that way from a staff standpoint. But I did just want to point that out, that our ordinances only allow us to go so far. So.
You know, I look at it this way, you know, you're exactly right. You know, we cannot dictate looks good to somebody, you know, one man's beauty is another's ugly and so forth and so on. But again, we're looking at egregious violations, things that are just, you know, somebody putting a sofa out in the yard, you know, that should belong in the living room and not out in the yard, and people letting their grass grow as tall as this table, and things like that, that can be a public health type, and I use the term egregious, you know, which means very bad, you know. People with vines growing up on a house that you can't even see the house anymore, you know, stuff like that. And, but I also wanted to add to what the manager said a while ago, that if we do go with the full-time, that we're going to be applying rules that perhaps haven't been applied very stringently in the past because of the time factor, and you know, you got somebody 1 or 2 days a week is not going to be as effective and efficient as someone who's here 5 days a week and working on it full-time. But again, you know, using the same principle, you're going to have people upset over that, but again, it's going to be an initial thing. People have been used to getting by with a lot over a lot of years, and you know, change for a lot of people is going to be upsetting, even when it's something for good. People are not going to see it that way. All they know is you're bothering them and telling them what to do with their property. Well, you know, we're not micromanaging. We're macro-managing, telling you not to, at least in the egregious ways, don't put a blight out there, so to speak. And it's the same thing as with the, and I know you haven't gone over this yet, but I'm just using this as an example, with the upcoming discussion on our fee, you know, $7.75 a month fee now that people haven't seen in the past. Well, there again, people have been getting by with us absorbing the cost year after year, and past 20 years, we saw a 27% increase. It was only covered by a 1.5% increase. You know, so yeah, that first year, we're going to get a lot of rocks thrown at us. But people have got to understand that you don't handle a problem by continuing to allow the problem to exist. You take care of it when it becomes evident to you that it is a problem, and you need to step up and take care of it. You know, the old root canal thing, you know, you get a root canal, yeah, it's going to be painful for a day or two, but then you're going to feel a lot better down the road because you did what you're supposed to do, take care of your teeth. And that's the same way I feel about the fee, and it's the same way I feel about planning and zoning. You know, if we are truly serious about bringing our town into compliance with the rules, then we do what we need to do, whether it's a part-time individual with more hours or someone full-time that's here a minimum 40 and maybe more a week. You know, we do what we have to do. Otherwise, suspend your rules. You know, don't pass a rule and then don't adhere to it. It just makes a mockery of what we do here. And you know, if people are going to kind of mock us, and when we pass a rule that's not being followed, then you know, we're no better than the people out here breaking the rules, because we're kind of breaking the rule ourselves by not insisting that our rules be followed and allowing for that. That's my 10 cents worth.
I got a question. Well, first of all, have you had a root canal?
Yes, sir.
I have as well.
Yes,
and
sir.
if it's not done precisely the right way,
Yes, sir.
it abscesses, then you're in worse shape than when you
That's
started.
true. That's
Right, so we gotta be sure that what we do is correct. Right, but back to the budget. Justin, the, under planning and zoning, I've just got the packet you gave us last time.
Yes, sir.
Just the contracted service that we're currently paying. I made some scribbled notes on here, and I can't make sense of my own notes. I was just wondering is there a certain line item where that falls under? Is that under that 45?
Yes, sir, that's contracted services for planning and zoning, 10/49/45.
Yeah.
That is where we pay for John Gaines, yes.
Right, and that's 60. That's all him.
No, sir, no, 30 is him, and then the other 30,
So I've got 25K consult written down next to that. What?
25K is for the, Ben, can you remember?
Transportation.
5 for the back, and then 25, yeah, transportation.
Yes.
Maybe I need to finish my
That was a
thought when I
match
take it.
for the grant.
Yes, thank you, Lynn.
Okay. All right, so you said that 30 is about him, so that's like, even if we pull double time on him, that'll bring us to 60, so we're looking at a 50% increase in the numbers that you gave us last month, right? On top of what you handed out today.
No.
No, what I handed out today includes the full-time code enforcement.
Right, but
Position.
I'm saying that with the overlap. That's why I was looking into the numbers you gave us before.
But it shouldn't take the full 60 to do what the manager's offering. There's a training
Right.
period and transition period, that's what he's saying, that would be a little bit over than the number he presented today. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
How long do you think that'll take?
It depends on who we hire, and
Right.
how much experience they have.
To give us a low and a high end.
Well, going back to what we said at the budget retreat, and she's done this before,
Yeah.
we went through 2 individuals to get to the third one that was kept, so it depends. If you get the right individual and the first one is a keeper, great. It could be 3 months, because remember, he's only here 1 day a week. So normal, our training periods for normal positions are 6 to 8 weeks with somebody working with them daily. So somebody with Lynn and/or Andrew working with him daily, they don't do code enforcement daily. So he will have schools that we can send them to if they are open to go to in person, and/or administrative that can be done online. But there will be that period that will take whatever time, our town policies that will be whatever time, to see if all of that works. And then as John is here 1 day a week, so who knows what that period would be. And again, this happened with her previous, where he was contracted service. I don't know if that was 1 day a week there.
He was, and we ended up going to 2, I believe, at one point.
And not trying to sidestep your question,
No,
trying
no, not at
to
all.
be completely
Yeah.
straightforward.
Right.
And still, they went through 2 to get to the third one that was kept. So that was almost a full year contract, and then some to get to that person.
Right.
So,
I'm a worst case scenario kind
so
You
in
know,
the worst case
so-
scenario, it took them 1.5 years to get to the third person.
Right, but I'm assuming, is that a situation where, let's say we make the transition, we're happy with the person, right? We close the door on the contracted service, right? And then we move forward with the full-time employee, it doesn't work out. Is this something where we could then bring the contracted service back? Because we're gonna have to train again, right? You know, so is that how it would work, or?
We don't close the contracted service until we're happy with the person we have. And that's just, it's gotta work by itself, and if it's not, we can't give up being productive for our citizens.
Right.
So if the person is not able to walk alone, we don't give up the contracted service. We've got to be accountable. As Gary can tell you, some of these can get us into court very fast. So we're not gonna say, go away, and then let the person sink or swim. We're not gonna do that.
Ron, so it's gonna take months for the person that we have the contracted services with right now to train our new code enforcement person.
It'll be a team effort to train, but yes, sir.
Yep, okay, so I'm gonna be blunt here. The reason why we're contemplating a full-time code enforcement officer is basically we were not happy with the contracted services that we've gotten. So the contracted service person is gonna come in here and train a town of Troutman employee, okay? If I had a failing student, I don't think that I would go out and get a tutor that's gonna get my kid a D. Okay? Because right now, we're not happy with the job, that's why we're contemplating this. So I don't, is there someone else possibly that we could bring in that could train our person to how we want it? Because a non-proactive, okay, person is gonna train this person to be non-proactive and to do things the way he thinks it should be done. We're not agreeing with how he's doing things right now as a council. That's why we're looking into this.
Well, and with all due respect, part of that is his contract, and even though council has said, and I'm not arguing with you or with council, his contract was to be reactive and not proactive. And even though we would like for him to be proactive, his time simply does not allow him to be proactive. He can't. And as much as I would like to be here and say, go be proactive, he simply cannot. And then when we say, hey, go and be proactive, I can tell you with the workload that is on his desk, he can't go out and do that. So even though there's certain things that I certainly would do different from my background and yours than what he does, I can say with what he is doing workload wise, there's not enough time for the time that we're contracted with him to go and do the job that you and I and the rest of council wants him to do. So for us to give him that time, then we've got to have more days. And to have more days, then it would be better to hire somebody. So, and with all due respect, sir, I think if we gave him more time, he could do a better job, and we could alter the contract that we have with him, and we would be more satisfied with the productivity that he would give us. I truly believe that.
So it's not like a personal or productivity issue, it's a contract issue that's left us feeling unsatisfied.
In my opinion,
Yes.
that's absolutely the case.
And we've talked about that piece of it. As a council, we've not increased that budget. We talked about it. We've not increased that budget. We've stayed with trying to get him to do a little more within the contracted budget that we have. So that is the challenge. Now, I guess if we said to the manager, which I think his offer is we're better off just hiring a full-time person rather than saying, okay, here's another 50,000, just let him be more proactive. So I think what his offer is, let's just hire somebody full-time, ingrain them in our culture and what we are expecting, along with, because there's documentation, there's paperwork, there's other things that he has to do in order to fulfill the obligation when he goes out. What I'm hearing is, he's good at that. We're satisfied with what he's done, the work product. But he can't be proactive when we're only giving him, to a certain extent, hamstringing him with just that 1 day a week agreement.
But I don't need, my code enforcement, person getting trained by a person that's making comments that shouldn't have been to the national media on a situation that we had over a year ago.
I don't,
I can bring it up, sir. You made comments.
I'm not disagreeing with you, sir, but he was one of 3 that did.
It did.
Well, again, that's,
But
We got
that's not the
leadership.
professional way,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
I agree.
And I don't want, I feel pretty passionate about this, that I don't want my new code enforcement that's gonna be a town of Troutman being trained like that, though. Common sense should have known he shouldn't have been making statements to the national media. And same way, we all got texted after the last thing, and we didn't make comments to the national media because we
That's
knew
right.
enough.
The only thing I can say
what I would
is,
say,
this
though,
time,
is-
he didn't.
yeah. It's a lesson learned.
To be fair.
And I think when you have an employee, which our manager and our planning director will have, it will be very different than a contracted person.
Well,
I mean-
I see your point,
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Mayor,
I-
but, you know,
so-
and I'm a person
I
that
know
believes he
that-
should have been taken to the woodshed.
It's a contract issue, and we got, but going forward, we're gonna have an employee issue, if that ever happens, which I pray to God it won't.
So what happens if John walks off when you hire a person, says I'm not training him? Then what will we do? We'll train him ourselves somehow, won't we?
We,
And I guess what Eddie's looked at,
Is there
this
someone
guy's
else?
gone, why can't, what can we do to train, we're gonna train this guy somewhere, right?
we certainly will, and I'm not so certain that we don't have another option that'll work anyway. I'm not tied to the one option, and I want to be clear, I'm not tied to the one option. We may have another option.
But we also have a contract. He could walk away at any
Yeah.
point right now, right? I guess if there's a 30-day provision or whatever, but he would have to fulfill the 30 days and then.
That's kind of what
He can
I'm
still-
saying, what
yeah.
Doc just said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me another option, because it may be better with training.
Right.
Because I want this guy, our new guy, man, I want him to be professional, I want him to be polite, I want him community-minded also, what we kind of discussed about, that he can't be hammering people, he's gotta be flexible, but,
Massage.
because he's gonna represent us. And if he sets the town on fire, then we're gonna hear it.
We're gonna burn with it.
Right.
So just mathematically here, so of course, we've got our first year expenditure, but is it safe to assume, just based on what the contract price is, just getting one more day off our current thing is basically a net zero if we hire somebody? Of course, we got the increased cost for the truck that we're gonna have to foot, and of course, maintenance on that, but it still seems almost like a wash. Am I looking at this the right way financially?
Pretty close.
I had a comment.
Yes, Ms. Harris?
Was Jerry finished?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Jerry just went exactly where I was going, because I was listening to the numbers as far as hiring a full-time person and then looking at adding one more day. And everybody in this room loves our town, and I would love to have someone in that position who becomes vested in our town, like every thing kind of community oriented. That's just how I feel about it. My opinion is that I would love to have a full-time person as opposed to a contract. And it's nothing against John, but I'm just saying having a full-time person who's vested in our town as well, establish these relationships, I think that may be a better option for us.
And I think everybody's agreeable to that. I think Ms. Fennell's point was not sure that John was the best person to train, so.
Yes, sir.
Again,
No,
yeah.
I think also we need a full-time code enforcement, but I just wanna make sure, again,
Yeah.
we do it the right way instead of the wrong way.
Point well taken. All right.
You know, I guess, I just, since John had been doing it, I just assumed, of course, you know what that means, makes a, out of me and everybody else, but, I agree with Eddie, put a thought in my mind, what if he's not? That's what I want to ask you, are you comfortable with John, if we do go with full-time, John training this individual? You work with him directly more than I do, so you can answer the question better than I can. Would he be a good trainer for someone that we hired full-time if we go that route?
I can't answer that part, she can. I don't know his training ability.
I think the main thing, the main thing that we'll need a code enforcement officer to understand is what are our ordinances and what are our processes? How to write, when to write an NOV, how to hold hearings, those types of things. And John is very good at that. He's very good at following up on those code issues, writing those letters, those types of things. So yes, my experience with him is he's been excellent at that kind of thing. And actually when there are code enforcement trainings held in this area, John is the one that does them. So he is sort of the expert in code enforcement in terms of, because there's a lot of paperwork involved. He knows the code, he knows, how to follow up on those letters. So I think from that standpoint, yes. I hear what you're saying. It sounds to me like you're concerned about how this person's gonna interact with the community, and maybe with John there were some issues there. But in terms of knowing code enforcement from a ordinance standpoint, from a legislative standpoint, from a administrative standpoint, yes, I think John would be the person to do that. And my experience is, he's very good at that.
And then between you and our town manager, we can suggest that he's somewhat of a proactive person instead of the problem hitting, if you don't,
Yeah.
if it doesn't hit him in the face, you don't see it.
Well, if we have a full-time person, absolutely, that would be the reason we would be hiring them, is to come in here and to go out there and look for code enforcement issues. So absolutely, I think that would be something that not only John would enforce, but I would enforce with them, and Ron as well.
So basic overall, you're saying you would be comfortable, if we go this route of hiring a full-time, you would be comfortable with John training this individual?
Absolutely.
in all
yes.
all aspects of what you're saying
Yeah, I mean,
would
the
give
code-
us a good code
If they
enforcement
haven't done
officer.
code enforcement before, they're gonna have to understand what the process is. You know, how to send the letters out, when to send the letters, what the first step is. How many days do you give them to follow up? Then what happens after that 15 days? Because a lot of times code enforcement issues it's a long process. Unfortunately, there's very few people there are those people who go out and mow their grass the day they get the letter. But a lot of these larger cases, they're absentee property owners, and there's a long process. There, you have to go get warrants sometimes, so he understands all of that. When you're doing, you're going in somebody's house to do minimum housing code inspections, you have to go get warrants for that type of thing. And so he could definitely train them how to do that.
Is he good at getting along with the community?
Um,
I mean, I know it's a tough job, and
Yeah.
you're gonna have people mad as dickens at you, but
John-
overall, is his personality, his technique of getting along with the community is positive.
That has been my experience, is that you have to have, I'm trying to think of the word, you have to have a very unique personality to be code enforcement, because you gotta have tough skin, because nobody likes you, nobody likes the code enforcement officer.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to be able to get along with people. And I have experienced, my experience has been positive with John in the previous community that I worked with. He also did help us train the last code enforcement officer that we had, who turned out to be an excellent code enforcement officer. Excuse me, I apologize. I think finding someone with a military background or a police background is very helpful. And he kind of understands that too. He helped us hire Colleen. So when we didn't have such good luck with the first two, we did bring John in, and he helped us with that process, so.
Director Hare, you seem that you've got a history with this guy, you're happy with his work. So can I ask, what do you think, because this will fall under your department?
Sure.
Should we increase our contract service, or should we hire a full-time person? Because financially, it's a wash. I know we're only gonna get one more day out of that, so,
Yeah,
but what direction would you like to see your department go?
You know, finding the right person is the key, and if we find that person full-time, I think that's a good solution from a financial standpoint. Because if you're going to increase that contract to 2 days, it really doesn't make a lot of I think, Ron, the manager pointed that out, that it just doesn't make a lot of financial sense to bring somebody in and only have them here 2 days when you could have somebody here full-time. It's a lot more work when you bring in a full-time code enforcement officer. It really does add a lot of work. My previous job, I spent a lot of time dealing with code enforcement. As busy as we are with development, it will add a lot of work to the department, because I think we're gonna really need to focus on all this new development we have going on as well. So really, it's completely up to you guys. Whatever you prefer, we will handle that. We will take care of it. I think having a full-time person could be beneficial, in that we could also use some help. We are, I think I mentioned this, our permitting numbers have just gone through the roof. We issued 80 permits in April. And I think I gave you some perspective on that. I think last year we issued 300 permits all year, and we're trending upward. I think we're going to double, maybe triple that this year. So, a possibility would be if we hired this person, and I haven't talked to the manager about this, so this would be totally up to him, but is, having someone who can also maybe help with permitting as well. And kind of add some of those duties to that position as well. That might be a good solution. John has said he doesn't know that we have enough work for a full-time person in, code enforcement. But I think there's definitely work. If there wasn't enough code enforcement work to keep them busy, we have other planning work, permitting, that type of things that we could definitely keep that person busy. If the manager saw that position, is a solution for that.
Lynn, is this $50,000 a salary that will attract a good qualified code enforcement officer
I think
with
so.
some type of experience? Because we're gonna take a person with at least a little bit of experience, Maggie, correct? We're not hiring a green, brand-new person that never did code enforcement, right?
I think that's a decent starting salary. Yes, I do. I've seen code enforcement jobs posted for 30s, some in the 40s. I actually now I don't know that any jobs are in the 30s anymore.
Right,
But I have seen them in the 40s. It just depends on the experience that they have. If you want somebody to come in and hit the ground running, that might be a little bit low, so with a lot of experience. But somebody who maybe is coming from a different background, who are gonna train, and this may be a second profession for them, that might be, that's probably a good starting point. We can do a little bit of research, I'm sure Justin and Ron have already done that, but, I think that's a good starting point.
Basically, to answer your question, you're not gonna get much experience in it. You're gonna get somebody that's retired, either military or law enforcement, that's looking for another income, and they're going to learn code enforcement for that salary.
Agreed.
So no having to break bad habits. That's a positive way to look at it, right?
Yes.
We don't have to untrain, just train.
Well, personally, I'd like to see it go with full-time if Lynn recommends it, and of course, town manager recommends it. I know there's a need out there, and it's not gonna, just like, Jerry said a while ago with prices, it's not gonna be cheaper, and I don't think, eyesores are not gonna just go away overnight, and you're not gonna do it with somebody adding 2 days. I think it's gonna take somebody, and as Lynn said, even if you come up with an unusual breathing period, there are other things that this person can do, keep it busy. So, I would like to, I'm positive on it. If the rest of you feel the same way, I hope, but I'd like to see it stay in the budget and, run with it.
I was just gonna mention, one other thing too is when, my other position, we did keep John on contract for like an on-call service, for about a year after we hired the full-time person that ended up working out. So if she had questions about how to hold it, she could call him. So that's something we could consider, and that was pretty reasonable. He charges by the hour, or In Focus charges by the hour for that.
That's that.
We also discussed going to 775, I think was the number that some of you all came up with. If we went up $4.95, instead of it being that's $5.95 was the number. That would cover the recycling and, to cover the $223,000 total. That would go up $5.95 a month. We sent out by email those numbers of what that generated. Did anybody have any questions on those numbers? By doing $5.95 a month,
In addition to the $1.80.
in addition, that would make it a total of $775 a month. Right now, they only pay $180. By adding $5.95, that would make it $775.
You were gonna get an answer back to us, a comment you had made at the, budget meeting, that we could not put garbage as a user fee. I mean, we couldn't make it as a budget item, it had to be ad valorem. Did you find out that we can do that we can make garbage a revenue? Because if you do this, you're looking at 223 will be under the refuge collection or such, it should pop up there, that recycling fee would be where it's at, right? Revenue, not an ad valorem.
Right, yes, sir, it will be
So you can do that.
a collection fee.
Because the other said by statute, that you didn't think you could, but you would check on it. You said it could not be charged as a user fee.
I still need to confirm that.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer it be garbage, because that's what it really is the problem.
To call it garbage.
But,
Statesville had whatever the
Solid
fee
waste
was.
fee, Solid waste fee.
Yeah, solid waste, so,
Yeah.
you know, it's obviously, they still had it for several years, even though they're doing away with it now.
Yeah.
So I mean, it
I
appears to me
didn't-
they can break it out.
They're gonna check back and make sure
Yeah.
it'd be done that way, because if
Right.
not, it'd have to be the other expenditure without the garbage. So, and when we left, we were looking at $5, which was the garbage by itself. Then it was $1.80, but added to it was $6.80 at one point, so now we're at $7.75.
Well, if you want to look at the sheet,
Yeah. that's what
are
I'm
you
looking
looking at that? There was discussions about all the numbers. I was just trying to show, if you just wanna cover trash and recycle pickup, that would be $7.75.
And if we can legally do that, that's the other thing. But then
Correct.
my other question's gonna be, for this time, and that, I'll get back to Doug, is, so if you were to get to this 223, obviously, it's not in the revenue right now, so you're gonna have, and we're gonna be back to balance. So that 223, what are those things that we've not been able to pay for in the past that we're gonna be able to add into our budget from the expenditure side? Because we already got the garbage in there, and the recycling, it's already in the expenditure. So to make this balance, I know we've had some concern, what is that, code enforcement officer? I know Doug and I have talked, and he's talked several times about needing a person in that office, and we need more help there.
Yes.
Are we gonna see those dollars for this time, because we got to show them, you know, you will show a budget increase of 223, but you've already got sanitation.
Well, it would be,
So I'm looking at, where are we gonna, what are we putting,
it wouldn't be 223 increase, because that would be, you've already got the $1.80.
to be,
Minus 36,000, in other words.
okay, so the 180, okay, so yeah,
Right.
that amount of
Right.
increase. I know we talked about the code enforcement officer, it'd be
Right.
a good way to get that in the budget. And I was looking-
You're right.
You would
I
subtract,
was just saying that you need, you know, maybe, whether it's Parks and Rec or some of these areas we were deficient in, that's what
Right.
I wanna know, is what are the benefit we're gonna get this, because it's obviously, we already have the garbage in the budget.
Or if you start, obviously it'd be up to the town manager and your all's
And
discretion,
that's-
but
I guess so I look at him
if you,
as how we get those
if you want to
dollars
start
back into-
forward thinking for, you know, future
Well-
needs and.
this year, right now, the thing that would be the immediate impact would be the code enforcement officer. It would be the difference in the vehicle. It would be IT, increase in the IT that we need. It would be,
Would there be room for another person in office?
yes.
I mean, if we're meeting, you said 45% increase in people, that means we've also got that much more work for these people in office.
This budget, as he submitted to you all, the current people paid, we are missing one employee on this budget. That's not in there, so that.
Not counting that code enforcement.
Correct, but there's one employee that's not on there. That's an administrative person that's not in there that has to be replaced. And that's for the front office.
Okay, that would be in the front office.
Yes,
Okay.
But that's not in the current budget.
correct.
But, and the question is gonna be, is that enough, or do you run another deficit?
Would we run another deficit?
Once you subtract out the code enforcement, all the costs there, 107.90, whatever IT.
No, well, with IT increase, we're in the process of, handling the IT needs and finishing up the evaluation there, the administrative person up there. Once we have planning department move next door, we are evaluating the 2 houses that should be turned over to us, to see what the expenditures are there. We cannot tell you all as of yet what the expenditure will be on the project on Wagner Street. So to answer your one question, the
Okay,
line,
that might be the problem, yeah.
yes, I can't tell you if I'm gonna need 75,000 or if I'm gonna need 150,000 for the building on Wagner Street. So that's the main part, it's a lot of difference there. Depending on what is needed for there, tells us what we are needed for the personnel as we have space. Because once we have space, we definitely need more personnel. That I have been screaming at you all that we've got to have personnel. But I can't have personnel until I have the space. That's as blunt and straightforward as I can be.
And my thing was just looking at, when somebody asked me, why did we raise this? Well, because we didn't run at a deficit of trying to, paying garbage without actually billing anybody for it, that we can't do these other things. One's this office is a problem, and then the code enforcement, those other things. That's what I'm looking at.
Yes, sir. And going back to even when Councilman Paul Bryant was here, we had, and Mayor Pro Tem, you all will have to tell me exactly what the phrase was said, because I was not here in attendance, but the phrase was something to the effect of, don't talk to me about a new town hall until you have built the 400th house. This should be the year that we have the 400th house. But we need to build a town hall. We don't have any extra money in town savings to build a town hall, but we need personnel too. So to add to the answer you need to give to the voters, we need both. We need the personnel to service our citizens as the population has grown, but we also need town hall. So I can't hire more people because I have no place to put them. I've got 3 different people right now sharing offices, and I need to have offices for the people, but I can't hire more people until I have the space.
And the savings that we have, reserves, has to be saved back, we have to match whatever we do to get that town hall grants. So we can't just don't pull the money out of our savings,
Correct.
because we got a big issue in front of us.
But by state law, we have to have, honestly, I thought it was 4 months. Justin found that it was a minimum of 2 months. At the Mayor Pro Tem's comfort level, they have all said in the past, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 months, is their personal minimums that we have just for worst case economy issues. And we all know that the economy is gonna get worse before it gets better. And we are not gonna be guilty of having those worse, whether it be the utility side or whether it be the general fund balance side. So, and as our reports came back, we're both fine there in both of those funds, but yes, to your point, where does the rest of the money goes? Where does it go? I'm sorry, is it increasing these funds? The first answer is to the code enforcement officer. Next is administrative person hired back up front. The extra funds then goes into the building on Wagner Street. Depending on the savings, hopefully there will be that cost between $75 and $150 to get the Wagner Street building back up to par, so that it can be utilized as an asset for the town businesses. Then that lets us know when we can hire the next person that's needed in town. But we've got to get the IT part handled as
If we
well.
don't get these start collecting garbage fees, we're not gonna, or get us back up, we can't do these other things.
If we don't get the garbage fees, we can't do any of those things.
You gotta freeze up money in your ad valorem. You know,
That's just what I wanted to
Yes,
hear
sir.
exactly. What's our deficit? Because obviously we're paying for those things, as Jerry and I talked one time, there's gotta be something we're not getting done because we're spending, we usually have a lawn tax and paying all the garbage that are running, being collected.
Yes, sir.
So are we saying additional IT expenditures on top of what we already have in here?
Yes, sir. Our IT this past year, we have debated whether we should hire a full-time IT person or whether we should look at IT services. And if we hired a full-time IT person, everybody in the room, you and your profession understands what a full-time IT person is. I don't think, and looking at our current budget at this point, that I can ask you for a full-time IT person. So we're stopping short of that, but we do have to increase what we are doing for IT services as compared to what we have been doing in the past.
All right. So I think it was, we weren't sure 4 or 2, but it turns out it's 2 months
I'm sorry?
of expenditures.
Minimum?
Right,
Yes, sir.
right. Since some people over here wanted 6, what do we have?
If you're asking for our reserve balance, I can't give you an exact dollar amount, but I can give you an estimate
Okay.
of the
Well,
general fund.
we're required by statute to have 2, right?
Yes, sir.
We got that?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would be, I mean, if you want, I'd be interested in knowing what the general fund,
I would,
how did you refer to it? I'm sorry?
reserve?
The reserve.
Yes, sir. I would estimate probably between 1.5 and 2 million.
Unrestricted.
Yes.
Percentage-wise, what would that be based on last year's expenditures?
Percentage-wise?
Yeah. That million, what'd you say, million quarter, million and a half?
Probably 15-20%.
So there you go, you know, we're more than double. Because 8% is what I think, you know, the local government wants, so, you know, if you're 16 to 20, you're double, if not more.
And that's on expenditures.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe even a little more than that. Yes.
Yeah, so, we're well cushioned, in other words, we're well insulated, even though I wouldn't turn down more
Yes, sir.
revenue, never turn that down, but yeah, as of right now, we're well cushioned.
Any other questions on the trash, recycling collection? Next item.
Just to state that we was told to figure out what is the ad valorem tax rate, should somebody want to do that instead of the monthly fee, per 1 cent at $70,000 dollars annually. Just like to reiterate to some, and I did get several comments from people that either watched or had heard the comments from previous discussion. They liked our discussion that we had collectively, that property taxes, they felt like unfairly penalized certain people, that if they had $500,000 homes, then they had to pay more for a truck to stop there versus a home that was $150,000. It cost that truck the same amount of money to stop, regardless of what the home cost or what its value was. They felt like that a user fee was more adequate, that everybody had to pay the same fee regardless of what their home's value was. But certainly for you all's concept and to purview, it's 1 cent equals $70,000 income and revenue. I would just like to point out, we are the lowest tax rate of any decent sized municipality. Troutman is 52 cents per 100. Statesville is just shy of 55 cents, so we're significantly percentage-wise lower. Mooresville is 57 cents. When you look at other towns nearby, they're as high as 63 cents in Winston, Kannapolis. Neighbors to our west are even higher than that. All of those charge commercial or business district increases in fees that we do not. All of those also charge, or we're talking about charging $7.75 possibly for a user fee for waste. All of those charge higher fees than we currently do, even though Statesville did talk about repealing theirs. They have also talked about increasing their ad valorem taxes significantly to go up for that. So you take it out of one pot and put it into another, okay, it's still gonna be a fee that's charged one way or the other. And whether we took it out of this fee and put it in that line item, it's still the same. And there, unlike Troutman, we do have some rental property here, but we don't run close to the 50-50 ratio that Statesville does of home ownership versus rental. And I'm proud that we're in a community that's not that way. So when we say we're gonna charge ad valorem taxes, it goes to homeowners and not landlords. So maybe that's part of the difference, when you're charging landlords fees instead of homeowners, that you can get by with that. That's the big difference when we are looking at these fees, that it comes in to hit people personally. That's all I have when it comes to those side of things. On our ad valorem taxes, I'm ready to discuss the.
Now, we did not put that increase in this budget we're seeing here. You didn't put it in, did you? Because
No.
I'm going to reconcile,
Yes, sir.
wants to stay at 52 where we're at. With no increase in ad valorem, I think that's the wrong thing to do. And I was hoping, I was not reading that you put that in.
No, sir.
You are correct. My recommendation as a manager is not to increase ad valorem taxes. It would be that you do a monthly fee that everyone goes. And talking to the citizens that have approached me or called me after we last discussed it, most of them are certainly more willing to pay a fee 12 times a year instead of one larger fee that's on a monthly or annual bill. And ad valorem taxes was the feedback that I received. Even if you said it's gonna cost $100 more, they would rather spread that out over 12 instead of calling it something else and paying it one time a year.
You know, just for comparison, basically, it still would not be full 223, I don't think. But at 70,000 for 1 penny, you'd have to raise 3 cents
Yeah,
to
that's
come
right.
up with
Yeah,
that
that's right.
223 or thereabouts.
So you
So I think what we're doing here with the fee versus the ad valorem is more advantageous.
I agree.
Again, like I
I
said.
agree, it should be, the fee is, I like it better. Now, all I'd ask is that when we do put this together, and you put the budgets, the monies that we put back into the budget to make expenditures balance, I'd like to know where they went. Just because I think that helps me to know, and I'm sure the rest of it is. Just somebody asked me, these are the things we were deficit on, and we had to get improved.
I think that's a reasonable ask. And one thing I will also add, with property reevaluation due next year, one of the things that this also keeps us from doing, a lot of towns and cities, they raise ad valorem taxes, and then when the reevaluations go out, then they want to go out and reduce ad valorem taxes, and then a year or two later, they're raising them back up. This stops stuff like
Yes.
that from happening.
Yeah, you're better off to stay, if you do it, stay in this position.
Yes, sir.
And may I add to what you're saying, you know, trying to justify, you know, the fees and any increases for revenue, you know, these are to address situations that have not been fully made known to the council in the past in at budget time.
I'm aware of that.
But again, we're taking care of past problems, yeah.
But I'm saying that if we were paying it, and just like Jerry and I talked, then somewhere, what were we losing, what were we not getting done that we should have been doing?
Right.
And those are the kind of things we can do with this budget, step there, and that's what I wanna know is, like, I think that office has gotta be addressed.
Mhm.
I think this code enforcement has to be addressed, those kind of things that we're able to address, but correcting the one that was a cause, you know, a thing, that's all I really wanted to know.
Yeah.
I don't disagree, we ought to be there,
Yeah.
but it's just.
And I'm just saying, you know, some people say, well, we've been going for 20 years with only a, you know, a 1.5% increase in our, and well, that's, okay, yeah, you've been getting away, you've been darn lucky. You know, the luck's run out. We've got to, you know, we gotta pay the pauper, so to speak, and that's what we're doing now. And we're getting more money, but it's something we should have been doing all along. And we're having to do it now instead of letting the problem continue. And, again, I'll use that same analogy. It's gonna hurt initially, but, in the long run, it's good for the town, and I think the people will, get used to it, and if they take time to understand, they'll understand it.
All right, Ms. Harris, any comment on the, statement, regarding property tax?
No, I don't have any comments on that, thank you.
Okay. Next item?
The next part that we're going to discuss is the utility side of things, was the water bill. As we discussed, unfortunately, the last increase that we had in water bill was 2016-17 budget year, and it was a minimal increase. There had been an increase cost to the town of Troutman 4 years in a row, and nobody had passed that on information-wise to the town council, and town council also did not know budget-wise and or information-wise to do anything about it. So there was a minimal increase in 2017 that was minuscule. And if you all will recall, there was a minimal allotment due to the town of Mooresville of $75,000 that was for a allotment for increase for sewer capacity. And that's when that was due, there was not enough money in the balance at that time to pay that. And it actually, embarrassingly so, had to be financed. And that's how we knew back then that there was not enough funds that in the budget, and that's why the rate increase occurred, so that they could be money for when the next allotment was due, so that it could be paid. Well, every year Newton increases its allotment, or its fees based off of what the inflation rate is, and that has been passed on to the town of Troutman. And that, for whatever reason, to you all's knowledge, when I talked to Mayor Pro Tem and Mayor, has not been forwarded to you all, so that you all did not know that that rate increase has gone up. And speaking with Adam Lippard, he only knew of one increase, even as the Public Works Director, he had no idea. So when we got made aware last year that there was an increase, I was informed that no need to go up, that there was enough in the fees. Well, when we had $125,000 repair bill this year, we did have enough funds in the account to cover that. But as our increase in flow to Mooresville goes up, Justin and I get a report, as does Adam, on a regular basis of how much that is, and we will have a fee coming up soon that we're gonna have to pay them for our next allotment. And that's why we have to charge a certain amount of fees. When we pay for fresh water, then our wastewater gets charged proportionately. That's why we have these fees. So when we got noticed in late February, early March, that because of inflation, and I stress, Newton nor Energy United can control what inflation is. We know who to blame for that. But when it happens, we can't control what that inflation rate is. But no telephone calls, no nothing. Here's your letter, here's how much it's going up. And it was 7%. What a shock. 7% in fees for 1 year. I made the phone call, and then of course we went back and we researched since our last rate increase, as I sent you all an email, since the last rate increase, there had been 10.3% compounded of total increases to our fresh water. There had been numerous wastewater increases. Of course, we've got two different suppliers, but no increases to our citizens. This year, out of the 7% increase, that's a total of 17.3% increase in fresh water. We have no choice but to go up. And I stress, I'm aware you all were not made aware. I was aware of one time, Adam Lippard was aware of one time, but now we are all shackled with the unfortunate duty of passing on these increases to our citizens. I live here. I'm gonna have to pay for that water just as each of you are.
When was the last increase? Sorry, I didn't get it right.
2016, 17. And I'm sorry I don't have that exact number with me, but it was a minimal increase somewhere in the neighborhood of 2% if my memory serves me correct. Isn't that right?
Even though it went up 10.
Well, at that point, it was not 10. Since that increase, it has gone up, compounded a total of 10.3% more. Prior to that, it had been about 8% total, but they only went up 2.
So it went up 8, we only did 2.
Yes.
For whatever it's worth, and I know we're splitting hairs, I think it's 1.5, wasn't it? 1.5%?
I think you're correct,
Yeah.
actually. I think it's 1.5, not.
Because I think they raised it and then lowered it some
Yeah,
back.
yeah. And I don't think there was no fair. I think they raised it one year and then lowered it 0.5% the next year and didn't tell nobody.
Yeah.
I think they raised it 2 and then lowered it 0.5 and didn't tell nobody.
We should have took credit that we lowered it.
You know, I know it's water over the dam, but again, what you don't know until you do know it. And then when you do know it, you should act on it. And, I'll take the walks like anybody, because I was around, I've been around back again since early 2014. But again, you don't know what you don't know. When you ask the question, you're told everything is fine, it's been taken care of, you don't need to do it. And, on the one hand, you're having people complain at you day in and day out about your utility rates, and you've got on this end saying, you don't need to go up year after year, we've taken care of it. It's kind of what you like to hear, enjoy hearing, but the hard truth is, that's not what you should have been hearing. And I'm hearing it now, it's plain and blunt. It's a shame it's coming all in one year, but it needs to be addressed. We don't need to allow a problem that's been existing for quite some time to continue. And I'd just rather take the big boulder right now than all the little rocks that's gonna come over the next few years if we don't, or we just do piecemeal.
We did pull the average. I know each of you and I both will get phone calls and say, hey, you didn't look at my bill. I'm one of those, this is not my bill. I've got teenage sons, so this is certainly not my water bill. But the average water bills for our town, our IT guy just left the room. It's certainly not his bill, I can guarantee you. But the average water bill for the town of Troutman currently is $71.21. If you all so choose to go with the recommendation, and we didn't propose a full recommendation of all the years of increase, we just went with a minimal 20%, which is the 17.3 of the last 5 years, with a little bit of cushion. We all can look at what this year's inflation rate was and know daggone good and well with what the inflation rate is going on right now, it's going to be more than that next year. But with us knowing we're not going to try to hit our citizens next year with another increase, if we just went with 20% this year, knowing we're not going to come back and hit them again next year, if we just did the 20, the average $71.21 bill now would now become $85.45. The industrial bills currently average $185.79. That would become $222.95. And again, I apologize to each and every citizen, and especially my wife who pays our bill. But this is unfortunate that previous persons responsible in our town did not think it worthy of raising rates every 3 years. That to me should have been appropriate instead of waiting for this to come out this way. And all I can do is apologize to the citizens and to you all, and as I'm the bearer of bad news.
Bless you.
Because it's certainly, yes, bless you. I'm certainly having to deliver the bad news, but I nor any staff here can do anything but deliver the bad news, as that's what you have asked us to do, is be good stewards of our jobs.
Any questions on the water proposal?
I need to add this part, Mayor, for everybody that may be watching now that missed it when we discussed this previously. I have to stress that our utilities side of things are different than our property tax side of things. Our utilities is a complete separate fund. We cannot use property taxes or ad valorem tax side of how we charge people for those to offset the utilities. And you all know that, but for all of our people that's watching and or listening, it's two separate funds. So the utility side of things have got to pay for themselves. So going forward, if we have future accidents and or if we have future expenditures on the freshwater, wastewater side of things, that fund has to be self-contained and pay for itself. That's why these expenditures over there are supposed to be self-sufficient. And we can't use ad valorem taxes for that. So when people say, my water bill and they charge me enough taxes, taxes don't pay for the water bill. And I just need to stress that out loud.
That's why they use the term enterprise fund. Like an enterprise, you've got to at least support it.
Yes,
You've got to at least break even to support the business. Same thing with our public utilities, which is kind of a business, if you will. It's got to support itself. We cannot transfer from general revenues to the enterprise fund.
yes.
It's got to support itself.
And the only other thing I would add to that point is prior discussions, at least for me being on this council, where we continue to have and have on the books over a long period of time, large residential projects. We've tried to balance that with some of our industrial and commercial businesses so that we would have less of an impact on some of those individuals who talk about the impact on their personal wallet. And so I think we've done better at that, and so that's probably helped us improve a little bit on the water sewer side. But
I certainly would add to what you just said, Mayor, is 100% correct, that right now, the Walmart building is an example. The TPA project, even though it's not built yet, that some of our citizens may not realize that those type projects absolutely for these type things are most beneficial to our utilities side of things. And every economist around the world will tell you on an economy like ours in the United States, those type projects 5 to 1 are better than a residential projects, but we've got to have that proper balance. And we can't have 10 of those versus 2 residential projects. It does need to be balanced. To your point, absolutely agreed and we do need the balance of them, but they certainly make our position much better when we have those, especially when they're close to interstates, and not in our downtown areas, messing with our residential area.
So now,
I know you talked about when I say our problem, the broken pipe that, what, I think $125,000?
Yes, sir.
Which we don't have, knock on wood, thank God we don't have that often. But is
That
there?
one was our worst ever.
Right, but is there an insurance policy that the town could take to cover that? Or it would basically, I mean, if you went 10 years, you know, I mean, it would cost more than $125,000.
There certainly is policies out there that you can purchase, but most of them, like you just said, by the time you pay for them, they cost you more for the insurance than taking care of the repairs over time.
Thank you. Got it.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Harris, any questions?
No, sir, I don't have any questions.
About us, okay.
I do.
Trout?
I know it's a separate fund, but is it possible for us to look at it the same way that we were just looking at the trash recycling / limb pickup? Right, so I know every household has a different usage, it cannot predict it, right, but we're basing it off an average bill. So do we have at least a conceptual idea of how much this will contribute to the utility fund? Or into the revenue column
20% more.
of water and sewer charges?
Yes, sir.
Water sales, sewer sales. Yes.
Water and sewer sales.
Sewer sales. I have charges on mine, is that different, is that a different value, or do I need to dig?
Are you looking at are you looking at the summary sheet for April?
That's the water and
Mr.
sewer
Rock?
charges, yeah, and I'm just going off of actual prior year. Or do I need to go to the utility section? What do you gave us last
Summary
night?
in this one.
On the budget, when you gave us the budget revenue, that revenue, then you broke it all down.
Yes, you're right, Mr. Auction, water and sewer charges. That-
On
that
the
means-
summary sheet, that's a good enough
Yes.
value to.
Yes,
to
that
use.
consists of water meter and sewer sales. He's looking at the monthly financial summary. Yes, you're correct in that.
Okay. So also along those same lines, just that same train of thought, I guess I should say. Hearing what the property tax rates are around us was very powerful. Do we know what the water rates are around us?
I have not checked. I did not. I will be happy to get those. Do you have them?
I looked into that, when we first started this discussion many months ago.
No whammies.
It might just take me a minute to find it. Must be in my internet though.
But you're saying Energy United gets their water from Newton, and Newton charges based on the inflation rate.
That was our contract agreement when we started business with
And that's why
them.
we've been coming along smaller amount, then all of a sudden it hit us pretty good this time, and there's others that's been steady. Every year we've been adding more to it. So while we
Every
didn't
year,
notice maybe 2%, 7 we know, we'll notice.
every year we have had an increase, and it has been based off of the inflation, national inflation rate, yes.
I have some for you. So like, for Statesville, for example, now this is when I looked back months ago, I don't know if they've raised rates since then. For 5,000 gallons of use, Troutman bill will be about $93 a month,
How much?
$93.
For
States-
5,000 gallons?
Yes, sir. Statesville will be $78.
Ooh, I wrote that about Statesville. Statesville is 78.
Yes,
Troutman is,
93.
mhm.
and Morrisville would be like almost $69. But then when you compare their property tax rates to the towns, Morrisville's 58 cent, Statesville's 54.78 cent. So,
But those are separate.
yes.
Property tax feeds general fund, right, but the water bill.
Yes, fund-wise.
Feeds
But
utility.
to the consumer, they look at it as
Dollar.
they're paying it.
Gotcha, yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
They certainly are separate, but then you look at the total cost of what does it cost me to live in Statesville? What does it cost me to live in Morrisville? Do I pay for a school system to live in Morrisville and a school system in Iredell County and law enforcement in Morrisville and law enforcement in Iredell County? Do I own my own water system in Morrisville? Do I own my own water system in Troutman? No. I'm having to pay for these services elsewhere. We certainly can build our own water system in Troutman, but then how much does that cost divided by 4,000 people? There's a whole lot of other things that goes into the cost here. We had an opportunity of building our own water system in Troutman, but some folks at the time didn't want to be beholden to the federal government. We had our own opportunity of having our own wastewater system, but some folks at the time didn't want to be beholden to the federal government. Now we're having to deal with the cards that we have played. If we could get water from somebody cheaper, it'd be certainly nice to do that, and we're trying to negotiate those fees.
Absolutely, and I've told you publicly and privately how excited I am about that.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, just like you said, right, when you look at the list of the towns, they're not exactly apples to apples,
No, sir.
right? Would it be possible to maybe get some of that data? I don't know how hard or what it takes to get this, like, a general question. Does Cleveland have a water treatment facility? I genuinely don't know.
The town of Cleveland,
Right.
they do not. They purchase water.
Right, so what are they? What's there? Along those lines. Because that's the thing. I think what Statesville and Morrisville both treat water, right? So, of course, when you produce it, you can make the argument in a general way that you're going to get.
Certainly,
You can
certainly.
pass on savings to the people in town where we can't offer that because we're not producing it, right? But so other places like Cleveland or, well, definitely not Newton. But if there's anything like that around, I'd love to see that just to get a little bit of apples to apples.
And like Taylorsville, I mean, you look at how rural Taylorsville is, and then how much does it cost to live and work and play in Taylorsville as compared to Troutman? What amenities do we have as compared to them? Cost a whole lot less here than it does there. So it's another example.
Yeah. I don't think we'll find our exact chimera anywhere, but let's compare this to two places that
There's only
produce
one
their own water, maybe it exactly.
Yes, sir, and there's only one center to the universe, and we're
That's
here.
right.
Yeah.
Another one to make a check is, I think it was Pittsburgh, where our former town manager from, they were purchasing from Chapel Hill or some others, so they were in the same situation that we were doing, purchasing. That would be probably because you're down in that hub, you'll probably find out that still got a pretty good deal.
Right, yeah, that's like looking at Troutman, Statesville, Mooresville, ouch, right, but it's not really a fair comparison.
Anytime we can take a price point and dilute it by 20,000 people versus 4,000 people, that's always gonna be an unfair comparison.
Right.
Whether you own a system or whether you're buying water, that's always gonna be bad. Then and again, when we look at the other tangibles, it's what does it cost me to live, work, and play here or there overall? Like you say, is always gonna be I don't know. But you take a small town like Harmony and North Iredell, they don't own a water system, they don't have their own police department, they use county water, they have septic tanks, so you can have one part, let's compare it to that, well, they don't have the rest of it to compare to. They don't have town employees, but they certainly have a great town government up there, Mayor Matney is a good guy. He comes down and visits here all the time. Great, but it's not fair when you start to compare certain things. They certainly have a town and a good town. And I wouldn't dare say a negative thing about them, but it's not fair to compare us to them when you want to compare certain things. Their water's cheaper than ours. It certainly is. But then they don't have town employees, they don't have the other things that goes along with being a town. And I'm certainly not saying anything negative about Harmony, it's a
Sure,
great town.
Sure, yeah, we're not gonna find our exact carbon copy, right, but show me somebody north of 93. Is that a good request?
There's several out there, just go
Right.
to the beach.
There's got, well, I mean, there should be somebody around here. I mean, Energy United has to sell to a lot of folks, right?
Energy United at Sewell and Statesville? I mean, Iredell Water Corp?
All right, overview of the upcoming agenda. Good.
Upcoming agenda, you said?
Upcoming meeting.
Yes, sir. We have good things happening there. Consent agenda. We had at least one confused person wanting to know why we have things on the consent agenda. That is simply an approval of things that, were discussed last month, going into the April's agenda. And it also, from what we already discussed. I'll be happy to discuss any of those in detail if anybody likes. Then going to section 7, correct? Huh?
Five.
5, I'm sorry, thank you. This one is the Houston Road Development annexation request. Lynn?
That's on the consent agenda, correct?
Yep. And
Did you want me to go over the consent agenda items? or-
just briefly.
Okay, yeah, just annexation request, we've received a rezoning request for a distribution project off Houston Road, right at 77, on the opposite side of Houston. And there's a portion of that property, the property has to be annexed into the town. And the annexation portion of it will come before you all in June.
And this is just simply setting a public hearing date, that's
Yeah.
all that is.
Yes.
It's really, all these are primarily dates.
Correct.
Yes,
All the
just
annexation items are just setting public
Yeah.
hearings.
public hearing dates, that's all it is.
Under consent, yeah.
For 6 is also a public hearing date. And anything on that one you need to discuss, Lynn?
No, sir, just calling public hearing on that one,
And number 7 is also a public hearing date.
correct?
Y'all have any questions of that? And number 8, anybody have any questions on number 7? Lynn, did you have anything specific?
No, sir.
June 9th's gonna be.
Sir?
June 9th is gonna be busy.
Well, that one's just a public hearing stuff, it's no big deal. But yes, bring sandwiches.
Yeah, right there.
Number 8, budget amendment for acquisition of property at 344. That one is just a simple adjustment to make accurate for the purchase of the property to reflect the expenditure and the loan for what that one is. We have purchased it, it is ours, and that's the reason for our change in the budget this year from what was proposed last year, from a little over 5 million to what wound up being 5.8 million was property acquisitions this year. Any questions on that?
The,
Yes, sir?
not dealing with this exactly, but the Burgess property, have we closed on that?
That is, that's,
Yes.
That is that.
and yes, we did.
Wait, what, I thought we were talking about North Avenue. I was asked about conversion of property on Eastway.
You
Or
are
did I
correct.
put the wrong address?
You did put the wrong address.
That's my fault.
It is Eastway.
I apologize.
It's
You called me.
Eastway.
You
You
called me.
called him.
I'm
That's-
sorry.
That's twice you called us this week's agenda.
Okay.
Please correct it. That is Eastway.
All right, so it is
not North
Eastway,
Avenue.
okay, all
That's
right.
twice you called us this week, Mayor Pro Tem.
Beating me down.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
I'll get you to Jim. I'll get you back to Jim.
That's item 8, right?
Sir?
It's not 344 North?
It's not North Avenue, it's Northeast Way.
344?
Yes, and it'll be corrected for Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 9, new business. Rezoning request, Touche request. Applicant has requested a 1-month deferral. Lynn, would you like to touch base on that?
Sure. This is a rezoning request for a Troutman project off of Southeast Way, right near the intersection with Highway 21. It originally was 165 units. We held the community meeting. It's been to the planning board. Staff and the planning board both are recommending denial of this because it does not match our land use plan. So they are seeking a deferral. I think they're looking to see if they can get it under the number that our land use plan calls for. But that is what they're requesting, a month, to see if they can work things out and bring that back before you all.
We told them no ahead of time. They still, twice, not just once, twice, they still came before community meeting, had some opposition. They came before planning and zoning, and it was not good. So now they wholeheartedly understand why we've told them no. So that's certainly up to you all, if you would like to defer or not. I don't see any harm in deferring and giving them an opportunity to try to comply with our UDO, but that will be you all's choice at the meeting to defer.
So based on the deferral, just so that I'm clear, they won't be going back and forth, back in front of PMD. They're just deferring, coming in front of council.
Correct. If you all agree to give them a 30 days, they will just come back before you all 30 days later. We had one applicant, just to give full disclosure, that kicked the can down the road 2 or 3 times, and they certainly can, if you all allow them that many opportunities. Or you all can say, nope, you're here, we're gonna hear it, and if you all do that, then they have to go through the whole process all over again. Right, Gary?
Or you can refer it back to planning and zoning.
Right.
And make them do that.
If they come through with a different plan.
So the option on Thursday night could be, they're requesting a 1-month referral. It would be allowing them the 1-month referral with the 30-day, for 30 days, but they have to go back in front of planning and zoning.
Don't have to, that's up to you.
My point is, council can say to them, we're giving you a deferral for 30 days, but you have to go back in front of P and Z.
Yeah,
Can't say that, yes.
No,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
you can't, they can say deferral, but go to planning and zoning first.
And they just refer it back to planning and zoning.
I thought that was all they needed to say is, no, go back before planning and zoning, then come to see us.
You know, you can say either.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
And then, or start the whole thing all over.
Well, I'm
Well,
not
I'm
sure
just-
that's started over. Or,
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you all have to defer it to a specific date, or we have to re-advertise, which we can do. But I think the whole point of opening the hearing is so we don't have to re-advertise it. But
They don't have to open the hearing, do they?
no, they could just
They could
continue
just
the
defer.
vote here.
continue.
But I mean, I didn't
Because we
see
did in the last one.
one on there.
So I'll go back to my first initial point. We can say to this group, we're gonna give you a deferral for 30 days. When you're ready, you gotta go back in front of P and Z before you come to us.
You could do that, and then you would have to re-publicize the public hearing.
Have to republicize it.
Okay.
But if you just defer for 30 days,
Or you
you
can
don't.
just defer for 30 days, and then you don't have to re-advertise the public hearing.
But then it won't go in front of P and Z.
Right.
I think the whole process the mayor's trying to get at is he would like for them to go back before planning and zoning with a good plan.
That's fine, you can just refer them back to planning and zoning.
I'm having fun over here watching him. Get frustrated. I'm waiting for the steam to start coming out of there in just a minute.
If they're gonna have a good plan, he would like for them to go back before planning and zoning with a good plan. I think is what he's trying to get at.
Thank you.
I love you,
All
good
right,
mayor. Once in a
let me go
while.
to the next one.
Number 10. Annexation request applicant 42 North, Kathy Godley and Piedmont Landio LLC, Howard Bryan. That one is cleaning up numerous bits and pieces and giblets, as she calls them, down there so that we can eventually get that whole area around the truck stop cleaned up and the streets that are not in our control to hopefully be under one umbrella. There's a new gas station that's going in there. They're waiting on a couple of these pieces to come together so that they can proceed forward. Lynn, they've got submitted plans to you, but they've got one more modification, is that correct?
We've given them comments, yes, and I have not heard back from them, but we have reviewed the plans and given them initial comments, yes.
But there's works down there so that hopefully that area will become ours. Other than the truck stop that now exists, being in the county, all the rest of that will eventually, we hope, with you all's permission and adoption, get turned over to us so that it can become under our purview. The streets get turned over to us so that we have enforcement and are able to take actions down there. This is just one of those giblets, as she calls them, that we need to get under town control.
Oh, are we gonna have to fix the crater before?
Say that again?
Are we gonna have to fix the crater?
They're gonna fix the crater.
Awesome. That's all I need to know.
They're gonna fix the crater and they may even relocate.
Yeah.
The Mayor Pro Tem did point out, and I think you all have the corrected, what went out into your packets. Number 11, that first sentence said located on the east side of Southeast Way. That sentence is to be moved, and Kim did put out the corrected part in you all's packets on number 11. We apologize for that error. But number 11 is a continuation. If you are so inclined to approve number 10, then rezoning for number 11 would follow suit. Any questions on number 11? And again, I apologize for our error. I did not catch that when Kim brought that to me.
You see what's different?
Number 12 is auditing firm for 23. I did not make a typo there when I put that one of the three that bid for us had been arrested. Justin, tell them.
It's not an inaccurate statement.
One of the three firms that submitted a bid to get our business has been arrested. So just because we got cheaper bids, if somebody says, why didn't you all go to the cheaper one? It's a public searchable fact, as we did do our due diligence. And I didn't feel like we should submit to you all somebody that's got some criminal issues pending and or recently adjudicated, that they should be doing business with us. Another one was out of state, which certainly is not in itself a reason to not do business with them, but we did feel like, in talking with the person that he has recommended, that they were local enough and absolutely has a reputation that should earn our business. The bids, because of the auditing business of course, are significantly higher than what we paid for last year's product, but you all saw what we got.
I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I don't know if I can ask this question, but the one that faced some charges, is that the firm that we used? Okay.
No,
The firm that we used, did they currently put a bid in?
No,
No,
I don't know that they're still in that business.
business. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I was gonna say, on the Virginia firm that had put a branch down here, I guess relatively recently, they'd only done 1 or 2 audits in this state.
Correct.
They may know Virginia law, but they don't necessarily know North, and that, I like to see it more than just 1 or 2.
that was my thinking.
Bits of experience in this state of North Carolina then, so, yeah, even though they were cheaper than your suggested bid, I agree. Going with someone that does have experience and a good rep and experience in this state, again, get what you pay for.
Yes.
13 and 14 are self-explanatory. 15,
Ron,
Yes.
how many applications do we have for Citizen of the Year? could I
you all
ask?
got,
How many?
you all got.
Just
Oh.
two.
Just the 2. Thank you.
We didn't hold any back.
Nobody was beating down a door, huh? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Question,
Yes, sir.
and I'm just throwing this out for discussion, think about, do we necessarily have to award every
Nope.
year a citizen or a business?
Nope, you do not.
I don't wanna sound like I'm putting anybody down or being offended or offending anyone, but I don't know, I'd kinda like to see more, a little bit more choice, but.
And we certainly can, because of COVID and some other things, we didn't have a billboard up to remind people it's time to submit applications. It did go out in our whistle stop, but I'm not certain that even though we attempted our normal means of getting the word out, I'm not certain that it got out there like it normally would. I'm not throwing a stone at any of our staff. Our staff did its job the way it normally does. But to some people, if it's not on that digital billboard, it's not gonna happen. And our digital billboard was not operational, so some citizens didn't see and wouldn't know. But we in the last few years have not had a lot of applicants anyway. So I certainly can say,
We did put a deadline on it as March 31st, that went out, so, I mean, you gotta take that into consideration. And you can nominate your own person.
oh yes,
Everybody
you
sees
as
ya.
council can certainly,
Anybody?
At the time of, yeah,
you
I-
as council certainly can do that as well.
yeah, I hear what you're saying. My only thing is, I think what the Mayor just said is, historically, we've not gotten a lot anyway. And so I think it's been a little bit of, let's beat down the bushes to, try to find the right person or get an organization or somebody to interact. Yeah, if anything, I would say maybe we extend it. Now, I know we do it in the calendar year, but, if it's August or whatever, we delay it until then and make the announcement then. Now we got the billboard up and we go from there, try to get some additional.
And you gotta think too, this person rides in the parade, so, the parade's coming up and you've
Yeah.
only got
That's,
next month.
I'm sorry, what'd you
But
say?
we got the Christmas parade too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we offer, yeah.
But you also, we've never made certain requirements be known, and I got asked by one person, do they need to live in town? Or if that's not always been the case,
Right.
but at the same token, certain people either live in town, work in town, do something in town, and then others, it's, I understand. And I certainly feel like even though we put it in Whistle Stop, put it on our webpage and put it in other places like Kim has said, I don't know that we got the word out, but the last few years, if certain people staff-wise didn't nominate and or do, I'm not certain how some of it would have come off.
Well, you know, it's supposed to be a prestigious award, an honor, and I don't wanna lessen its importance to people. I mean, if you're just handing it out like candy, bits of candy, you know, well, this is all we got, so we'll just have to, you know, pick this, go with this person or that person. I mean, and I'm not saying that, you know, it's not maybe good people in there, but I would just like more choice, and that's the reason I'd rather, you know, as I think the mayor said, we just postpone it for a few months and put it back out there again, see if we can get some more takers, and I just don't wanna, you know, cause it's a certain time of the year, we've gotta give it to, you know, no matter who it is, we gotta find somebody to give it to. I mean, that kinda cheapens it a little bit. Loses some of its glitter.
I'm with you.
Okay, I agree, Paul.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, I guess for Thursday night is the offer here, on both Citizen and Organization of the Year to do them both, in the September timeframe with that.
Okay.
Okay.
So you want me to leave that off, the updated agenda?
We'll
Yeah.
remove those.
And the ones that we have recommended, we'll probably just need to let them know that it's moved to later in the year.
Well, the one nominee we had didn't have any information as to who nominated and how to get in touch.
Okay.
So it was not a proper nomination.
Okay.
I think that might have been organization.
That was the unknown person there, right? It said
Organization,
unknown, who was nominated.
Yeah, I read that in there,
yeah.
when I make copies.
Yeah, I mean, it could be fictitious. Somebody just made it up,
Yep.
just the facts.
Item 15, we have several appointments, one inside regular and one inside alternate. You all have those. I did have a couple people ask, could they serve on multiple boards? Currently, we do not have a policy that says no. I will say, when it comes to elected positions, state law says you can only serve one. But the town does not have any policies that we could locate. Gary may be aware of something, I am not. Now, when it comes to quasi-judicial, my opinion, again, Gary's our legal counsel, I defer to him. When it comes to something like that, maybe that's different, but planning and zoning board is not quasi-judicial, therefore I don't think it would fall under the same purview, but we don't have a policy that says people can't serve in multiple capacities, except state law says an elected official can't. And again, that being the case, I would go on to say that would extend to quasi-judicial boards as well, but Gary, what say you?
I'd have to go back and look at the statute, but I don't think it would.
So is there a recommendation on the BOA?
BOA is not up.
Well, I'm saying from a policy perspective.
No, our policy does not prohibit it. If
So-
it were me as a town manager, I would recommend a BOA not serve in another capacity because it is quasi-judicial. But other board members
Right.
absolutely have at it. Let them serve in multiple.
That's what I was looking for.
Yes, sir.
So, today we don't have, again, maybe it's just.
None of
I
these
would-
applicants serve in the BOA.
Yeah.
None.
So again, I would agree, other than BOA,
Right.
that could have this perception of whatever, you know, you serving on this one and this one, the rest of them, I'm open to allowing them to serve on multiple committees.
Yes, sir, I agree. None of these applicants we have serve on the BOA, and I don't know, as Gary just confirmed, I don't have any reason that says you all couldn't or shouldn't consider them serving on boards that they do. That's entirely up to you all.
And again, I know there's probably not a statute that prohibits that, but
Right.
I would just only offer that council consider a policy that says we'd like to make sure that we have people that aren't serving on, and particularly planning and zoning, but, I mean, I guess if they wanted to participate on the, Parks and Rec or something,
Just do them all.
I'm good with all, but my point is just, on the quasi-judicial where somebody's trying to make a
Sure.
determination on something that maybe they've already saw or heard on another committee.
Doug, can you bring us something next meeting or next month in the way of a written ordinance to that effect for us to change that policy?
Sure.
Or to clarify,
Sure.
BOA, that's the only way you can serve. You can't, or that's the only board you can serve on. You cannot serve on another board simultaneously. But again, if any other board can serve simultaneously on the other board other than BOA.
Sure.
So, something, what you've heard us speak of, something to that effect.
Well, I don't think that anybody should double dip. I don't think anybody should double serve. I just think it's a bad precedent and could lead to bad things. I think if somebody wants to contribute, they can apply for a committee. I don't know. I think it's a bad look if we have multiple people serving multiple positions.
My only concern is that sometimes we're struggling to get volunteers, period. So if you're on planning and zoning, and you say, well, I also want to help out on Parks and Rec, there's no, I don't know where you get kind of that perception, right? So I get what you're saying, that's why I was making that earlier offer, but again, I would not want people to get, hey, you made a determination on my, how close my shed was to the line, and over here, I'm bringing my, you also
Absolutely.
got approval on my ordinance over here, and
Yeah, I just, again, worst case scenario,
Yeah.
right? That's how I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
It's, if we're having trouble getting volunteers,
yeah.
then we're gonna wake up one morning and all these other boards are gonna be all the same people.
I hope that doesn't
I
happen.
hope.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Are we going, can you write hope into the?
Yeah. Yeah, well, as a town, I would hope we have more volunteers than that, but I know it's also a struggle. You also may wake up and you don't have anybody on the committee. I could go to that worst scenario, because you don't have any volunteers, right? So if I'm trying to get some volunteers and the people who want to be actively engaged, other than, again, BOA, I'm personally comfortable with.
Yeah, I can understand both sides, certainly. The only thing I'm struggling with, the one candidate who is on DRB, chairman of DRB, which of course I'm council liaison there, and who would like to also be planning and zoning. And on DRB, he contributes, we, we have a contractor, builder on there, but he, we have two. And he's a third, and he contributes greatly to that, as well as chairs the committee. I would not want to put him in this particular situation, point where he has to choose one or the other, because I don't want to lose him on DRB. But at the same time, I don't want to lose him on DRB because we tell him, no, you got to be on, and he quits DRB and says, I won't be planning and zoning, and because I think he would do a good job of planning and zoning, based on his background and his willingness and his intelligence and so forth. So, again, I can see, but in this particular situation, I would hate to lose this gentleman, whether it's to planning and zoning or DRB or both. So, it's something I'm struggling with. I'll put it that way. But again, I understand both. I see where Jerry's coming from. I understand where the mayor's coming from. And I know we can't just make ordinance based on one particular situation. But for now, I would like to see it the way we've been discussing. No disrespect to Jerry, just in this one situation, to save this gentleman from getting frustrated and maybe just saying the heck with you and leave, because we'd be losing a good asset. And as the mayor says, we have and continue to struggle to get good qualified people to be on these committees. And I don't want to lose one of them. again, especially if they haven't continued to do a good job where they are currently. So I would just propose that for right now, we go with what we've been discussing and let the manager bring us back, something for us to consider in June. And then, if we have heartburn in a few more months, we can go back and always tweak it. And you can only serve on one board committee, and that's it. But at least for now, that we go with making BOA only, Chevron BOA, that's it, period. And the other boards, you can be a part of both, two, if you so desire. Yes, sir.
Maybe you could help me here on this. I'm reviewing the applications, and I see a total of 4. Am I correct?
I can't remember.
Okay, well, I see a total of 4. I see one person that's already on a
Yes.
committee here.
Yes.
Who's the second
2,
out of this?
There's 2 of them.
there's 2 of them.
Tanya Bartlett, I see.
Oh, yeah, Tanya, you got the gun right, her, yeah.
MICAT.
Oh, Michael, okay.
But is she, I didn't catch it, she
He's
was
on-
asking.
He's on,
Yeah.
oh, it's showing he's wants to go on P and
He
Z.
wants to go to PNC, but he's also, he wants to go to both of them.
He's already on the BOA,
Louder.
DRB, and he wants to go on the P and Z. Tanya's on Parks and Rec and wants to go.
Louder.
Yeah.
No names,
Darren was asking.
Well,
no names.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, so one's on one, and one's on one, and they both want to go on
They're both on the
another
same.
committee. So not double dipping, but be on 2. Gotcha. I didn't know this other gentleman.
And the one thing I would say is, right now, we have 4 applicants, and I don't know what led to the drive that we got 4 applicants in 1 week to go on one board. We've had vacancies on this board for at least 2 months, but we've had vacancies on the Board of Adjustments, ironically, for 3 or 4 months, maybe longer, but yet none of these people's applied for that one. We've got at least one of these applicant pool, if not 2, have went verbally, publicly, making comments about planning and zoning matters. But now they want to serve on this board. That causes me, from a town manager's perspective, pause as to what the agenda is and what they're trying to do. So when we have Board of Adjustments that's quasi-judicial, and it certainly has everybody serving on that board in a different set of standards, even though you all have adopted a set of ethics for every one of our volunteers to follow now going forward, that we have made everybody aware, I'm certainly not convinced that everybody's following those ethics. That's something that everybody needs to understand. Just because they think it is a cool thing to do, going back to what the Mayor Pro Tem said, hey, we need to do these, and going back to what the Mayor and Councilman Oxer said, we want volunteers. We want them to certainly be qualified to serve in the roles that they're volunteering to do, but we also need to understand, and they need to understand, when they go to serve on these boards, that there's a certain set of rules, ethics, and expectations of them to serve there and to serve in that role. We have certainly had our history in the past of people saying they want to do something and then not following through with it. So when people turn in their applications, maybe we as staff, with you all's permission, need to send them what the code of ethics and the rules that they need to follow are, and ask them if they're willing to do that first before we even submit the applications to you all for consideration.
I think that should be part of the process. So it's the application and it's sending them that. So if they're filling it out online, I'm assuming somehow to show their interest, then it's submitting that. And maybe it's a conversation by staff on, you realize that this is the time that time commitment required, this is code of ethics required, these are the certain things that are required in order for you to serve on this committee and get their agreement, you know, on that early front, that you all have already had that conversation before they come to us.
Yes, sir.
Again, I think these are very important committees. Now, I've had the opportunity since serving on council, I've had the opportunity for two committees, and I can't mention names now, so I got that memo. There was a planning and zoning gentleman that wound up getting on a planning and zoning, that came here, introduced himself, talked for a couple minutes. There was also somebody from the ABC board that came here and talked to us. I can't really base my opinion on these people on paper.
I don't disagree with that, and I don't know, without you all giving staff a direction, and I think I said it, and I can't remember. It may have been the Planning and Zoning Board Committee, Councilman Harris can correct me, it may be Mayor Pro Tem Hinkle. It's one of the meetings we had recently, I don't think it was a council meeting. Councilman Oxer, you can correct me also. I just know it was in a meeting of some type that I made the statement to somewhere, and I apologize to you all as council, the mayor and council. I just know I made the statement somewhere, we don't just take volunteers to take a volunteer, they need to have some background and somewhere.
It was a council meeting.
It was? And whatever that was, and I will use Parks and Rec as an example. Somebody saying, hey, I would like to serve that because I played softball in high school, does not necessarily mean they're gonna be an integral part of the Parks and Rec committee, but just like we have also discussed, people that live in the town of Mooresville can certainly come and help us and be an integral part on one of our committees. They don't have to live inside our town limits to serve and be a benefactor.
Right.
So that's why we have inside and outside that serves in the various roles of depending on what they are. But just because somebody says, hey, I want to volunteer, does not necessarily mean what they are.
Right.
And I truly, to your point, I don't think our process up to this point, just because Ron White says I want to volunteer, means Ron White should automatically get in the room and start volunteering without some type of vetting process that you all have, or you tell staff to come up with that knows what they are. But at the same token, to the mayor's point, we have a lot of vacancies, and to what I said earlier, we've got them on Board of Adjustments. How these four people, and I'm not saying anything negative to either one of these four, how they wound up and said, let me put my application into the planning board, but not a one of them chose the Board of Adjustments, I'm perplexed. Why? What did we do as a town that said, this is the board you need to be on instead of this board? Because the Board of Adjustments, and I think Gary can agree to some extent, even though they don't meet as often, and even though it might not be in the press as much, the Board of Adjustments, because it's quasi-judicial, absolutely swings a bigger stick than the planning board. If I wanted to serve a board, that's the one I want on.
You're here.
That's because me and you served on that board.
But I don't think it's asking,
Well, you don't even have to have a planning board.
right. But I don't, I think us,
Out of show.
can us as a council make a recommendation, then we'd like to meet these candidates?
Yeah,
Because
so
if they don't have 5 minutes to come in front of us, and they wanna be on this committee, how are they gonna have the time to be on this committee?
So what I would say is, I think in the past, we probably need to go back to this, but we did ask for those members who are asking to be considered to show up. And periodically, we did get a handful of people, and some people would send a note and say, hey, I wasn't able to be here, or what have you. And some people did come, and I would explain they had an hour to kind of plead their case. they had about 2 minutes, but in either case, I think to Mr. Now's point, it'd be great for us to put a face and a name and maybe take a few minutes and ask them a couple of questions about their interests and, you know, maybe their background experience that they maybe didn't put on the form or what have you.
I agree with that, because honestly, I had forgotten that that's what I did.
That's what
You
you
and
did.
Selena.
Well,
You-
but even, no, when I came back
Yeah.
for the
Yeah,
BOA
yes,
appointment,
yes, you
I
did.
came back
Yeah.
again.
You sure did. You stood right back here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so honestly, it had even lapsed my mind
Yeah.
that's not even happening
Yeah,
yet.
that
So-
was a requirement at one point, just because of what you said, which is, as we look at these, if you don't know the person, you don't know the person, and we're looking at a piece of paper making a
So
decision.
could we put a hold on these until these people, you have the opportunity to appear in front of us? If they don't wanna, fine. If they do, it would behoove them.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like you've got enough to run the committees? I mean, these are,
Do you want me to see if they can come Thursday?
Next month's gonna be a busy meeting if you wait till
It's really
next
busy.
month.
Why couldn't we
But-
do
but
it at our agenda?
Yeah, that we always had them at agenda,
sure.
not at a regular meeting. I don't-
Sure.
I could also suggest one other alternative, would be to have a subcommittee as a council, that is your committee, that is your subcommittee. And so you have just two people, and they could interview these people, even by phone, for instance. And then they can make a recommendation to the rest of the council. That's just an alternative suggestion.
I disagree with that. I'd like for all of us to see them and have the opportunity to talk to them.
I would like to see also, and the manager brought this up, is to have staff vet them and to make sure they do. It's a part of the application process, and you mentioned this, they get a copy of our ethics paperwork for that particular committee. And they acknowledge that they have seen that and that you guys vet them. You know, you come up with those who you feel like are not, you know, then you don't submit them to us. Or you can, but you can say, you know, kind of like rezoning, or what have you, we recommend this or we don't. And then let us make the determination. But you guys vet them and make sure as part of the process that they do acknowledge that they have read the ethics statement and conflicts of interest and so forth. I was just gonna say, I agree with Eddie. I don't know about the two people. I mean, I'm not putting that idea down. It's a good idea, but maybe for some places, but for here, I think we're small enough that I think if after staff and they recommend them to us, or even if they don't, we can make the decision where, you know, we'll invite them to come and appear before us for a quick interview or not, and then we can do the vote. But I would like for staff to, again, take the lead on this, make the recommendation to us, and we do, obviously, we interview and do the final vote. That would be my recommendation, sir, if you agree.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through the recommendation. I don't want to put staff in a position where they're having to not recommend somebody and then be asked, why was I not recommended?
Well, that's why I said,
That would be my only concern is, this is a list of names and priority based on their skill set. These are, you know, these are the folks that I would, that you have to choose from. I don't know, again, I don't wanna necessarily put them in the place of saying, okay, I 100% recommend this person, 100% recommend that, but unless you all wanna do that, tell me otherwise.
Sometimes, as we hire and don't hire,
Yeah.
sometimes that's easy. And then some other times, we can certainly say, we can disqualify this one.
Right.
And then there's other times we can say, hey, we didn't disqualify nobody, here's your choice. And that's the best answer I would like to give you.
Yeah.
Because we're not doing a full interview process, I don't think it would be fair for these board appointments for us to do a full interview process. But we certainly can, as you all said, hey, here's a few questions, here's the ethics, here's why we do this, here's the typical that we can provide them. If it's planning and zoning board, of course, Lynn and her staff would be involved. If it's Parks and Rec, I would have Chip. If it's one of the others, I could have Adam or whoever. And we certainly can do a few things of, here's what it is, do you understand? Give them the background, get a feel, and give you all a synopsis, here's what it is. And some people we can say, this one definitely don't, or these definitely didn't. it's our recommendation to pause. I can certainly say over the time, there's been one individual, for example, I said, do not contact staff any longer. Contact me. Well, that individual, for every application they've turned in, you're not allowed to talk to staff. Why? You don't know how to talk to staff. Talk to me. And that one, I don't care how many applications they turn in for what, they're not going to get by to talk to staff. And that one's, well, why am I not on this committee? Why am I not on that committee? Dude, I have told you, no. No, 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 no. And that's a perfect one. If it ever comes in, no. Why didn't we get this? I've done told them they can't talk to staff, therefore, no, it's not going to you all. I own that to you all, if you ever ask me. No, he's not going to be on any committee as long as I'm your town manager. No, he's a nut. He's not going to be on any committee. Who said? I said he's a nut. He's not going to be there. Not going to be there.
Well, I don't want a distraction. I mean,
Keep
obviously,
going,
if you don't want a distraction, I don't want a distraction. I want a team player. So if the guy's awkward in a head, then no, I don't want him on there either. And that's where I would, depend on you guys, your staff, you and staff, to make recommendations. But again, I understand what the mayor is. I don't want to put you in an awkward position. So if you would prefer, you can, if it's somebody, like you say, that is just stands out that they would be a distraction, you can put on there, here's the name, but I don't recommend, whatever.
My role as manager is to be able to go to court if I'm ever sued. I said this because I have to be able to do that. While I speak too frank for some people's comfort level, I'm certainly willing to go to court when that one sues me. So in this case of the one that I'm telling you is a nut, I can prove in the court of law he's a nut. So whenever he gets around to suing me, I'm willing to go to court to prove he's a nut and he's got a criminal background. He's not going to be on any of these committees. So that one is a perfect example. When they come here, I can sue or get sued and say, yep, that's what I said. Publicly, he's a nut. So that's one of those, it's like, okay, those are those. But there's other ones that you all are going to be able to say, what happened? I couldn't tell you. That's y'all's choice. I certainly am not in position to disqualify some people, but there's other ones when we go through here's the rules, here's the ethics, here's this, and it's not my place or staff's place to go in that in depth to do that. And that's certainly you all's choice as elected officials.
Yeah, I think we should just be consistent. Just like have it, not necessarily, okay, we don't need dirt digging missions on people that submit, that want to volunteer to our town. Right, but yeah, I mean, it's a uniform, you're here to apply, that's the thing, simplify it for everybody. You're here to apply for a thing, here's the application, and here's the printouts that the sign that you've received it. Like you said, the stuff that we've talked about, code of ethics, things like that. I think that's good, because that's we're either clamoring for people to join or filtering out undesirables. I don't see how we can do both, right? So there's got to be a middle ground somewhere. I don't know what that is, but I'm just hearing different things. Like, we need people, we need people, we need people, and oh, well, we got to weed people out, we got to weed people out, we got to weed people out. I'm having trouble marrying these two ideas. I understand you made it very clear your point, right, about how you feel about some of the applicants, and that's absolutely fair, right? But
one applicant.
oh, okay.
Planning board used to make the recommendations, and then they voted to not make recommendations because they felt that put them in a very awkward position.
Right, and then I don't think any of us want to turn around and do that to the staff either, put the gum on their shoe. So.
Well, again, I have to ask the staff, like I said,
As I said, we have no problem doing the here it is. If something arises, we'll be honest.
Right.
I have had a 30-year career of being here. I'm willing to stand up. This is what I said.
Yeah.
It's not going to change today. So if somebody does something that's above board, that's what you all pay me to do. What's my recommendation? Here it is. But if the initial handshake, somebody wants to apply, if everything's great, I'm not going to say anything disparaging. But if they volunteer something, then that comes out too.
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
So, I'm not sure, but do we need to take this off the agenda then, for the meeting? The recommendations for
From
the,
what I heard, unless y'all give me a different directive, is it is off the agenda. We will ask them to appear at next month's agenda briefing to be introduced, and we will ask them in the meantime to come in, sign the thing that they understand our code of ethics and rules for the committee, and would they like to continue once they know what those are? Is that
Perfect.
not what
I
I
think that's
understood?
what
Yeah,
you said.
that's fine.
that's it? Hit the nail on the head.
Ms. Harris, any other comment on that?
And I hope I'm not repeating anything anyone said, but I think that, when I was listening to the news saying we want to act in the situation when, the town manager, anyway, I think that if we have cut and dry questions, but questions that don't make the staff have to, not decisions, that's not the word I wanna use, but if we must have cut and dry questions, and then give the code, and then the staff has to over to us. I think that kind of maybe the middle ground that Jared was talking about. That's just my thought on doing that. But I'm fine with them coming on the next agenda meeting and meeting them and going that route.
Okay. All right.
We're almost here, Mr. Mayor.
Nothing else on the agenda? Anything else on Thursday night?
Committee members?
Yeah, the land use.
We got one more thing.
Yeah.
Just the B,
That's
15B.
right. Oh, did you want to talk about that, or
Sure.
was that, okay?
That's just the, at last month's meeting, council asked staff, that they appointed, Mr. Oxshire and, Mr. Harris to the land use committee as liaisons to the new land, drafting that new land use map. And we just met a couple weeks ago and came up with a list of names that we wanted to suggest to the council, to start it on the advisory committee. So that's all it is, the list of names that we're recommending, for you all to approve or consider for approval, appointing to that committee. So we can start meeting hopefully in the next week or two. We'll hold our first meeting. We do have our first public input session scheduled for June.
When do you plan on meeting during this month, did you say?
Everyone I spoke with, I let them know that I would just be reaching out to them and hopefully scheduling a meeting within this month of May. So as soon as these names are appointed, I'll go ahead and reach out to them probably on Friday and see if we can't schedule something for the next week or two.
Was everybody receptive? What was the feedback?
Interestingly.
Mark?
So, yes. Some of them said they would come. I think there were a few that will probably come, not to every meeting, but they said they would be willing to just, do it.
Okay, well, I'm glad that we had a contingency for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Oh, what do we have to roll call?
Yes, we got a roll call.
George Harris,
Eddie Now, aye.
Paul Hinkle, aye.
Jerry Oxshire, aye.
Ms. Harris?
Elena, Councilwoman Harris, aye.
That sound like it's unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you, Felina.